something we hope you'll really like.
It's time for Planet Green.
We have launched.
We have completely launched. We've started the show, and it is Planet Green Trees. We're about to embark 2 hours of medical marijuana and marijuana reform in Michigan.
We're traveling through a dimension both of sound and ideas. We're at a place where the mind can comprehend and devise a wireless transmitter, measure time and light. Astonishing? Perhaps. But you can find it in a place that's known as...
Attention, ladies and gentlemen, the Planet Green Trees show is underway with your host, attorney Michael Komorn.
Dewey. Alrighty.
We have launched.
All right, welcome everybody. We're starting the show right on time here.
Right on.
Planet Green Trees, episode number 452. Show title is Other Than What the Sarcastic Fingerhead, spelled wrong, Fingerhead is saying, it's all white noise to Dan. We worked on that all week. It's a very significant meaning. And of course,
I think it's self-explanatory.
self-explanatory.
Would that be Dirty Dan?
Dirty Dan.
Dirty Dan.
Dirty Dan.
Dirty Dan and White Noise. That sounds like a movie title.
White noise
Throw in
all
a
over
little
your
goddamn
face.
Ray and you're all set.
Goddamn Dirty Dan. And the goddamn Ray.
And the white noise.
Today's date happens to be 2/20/20.
Ooh.
20. 2020. 2/20.
February 20th,
2020.
2022.
And I'm Michael Komorn, your host, and we're
Walters.
going to plow forward here with our topics. And before we do that,
We're going to try.
create some interest here, let me introduce the community entertainment. We'll start with the guy running the board over there, in charge of all things. Currently, he's from the one and only Tommy Two-Tone.
Hey guys, great to be here. Looking forward to the show.
Jim Powers is here. Jim, please tell us how you're feeling tonight.
Feeling pretty good. I'm glad to be here. Glad that we got all the technical difficulties worked out, I think. Hopefully. And yeah. And, you know. Oh, is that a hand signal for fuck Bill Schuette? Is that
Either that or Rick is really glad to see you.
I was debating which one it was. I really was, but yeah, it's good to be here. Looking forward to a great show tonight.
Next, we have, not wearing her Komorn Law sweatshirt tonight, but we're
I forgot. Sorry.
Please welcome Debra Young. Debra Young.
I'm so happy to be here. That's
Very
all I
good.
have to say right now, but I'm plenty to say later.
Okay.
Plenty.
We expect that
On
of you
many topics. I've reviewed them all, and I have an opinion on each and every one.
I'm looking forward to that. Dewey, as I often say, everybody needs a Dewey.
Yes.
Solid as always.
Oh my.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate that. Glad to be here. Hope everyone has a good time. And keep drinking milk.
Yeah.
Dewey brought something to my attention, which I have to
It's good
this
advice.
week to complete. Let's take a quick poll of this. This is the question Dewey asked, which was, did you see the race, which usually happens on Sunday, but it was moved over to Monday in the serious accident that took place?
I did see it.
Yes, I did.
I did see it, yes.
How many people know what I'm talking about?
Trump was
1, 2.
I skipped that part.
Terrible accident.
I
On
skipped that
fire.
part.
Crazy.
You know what I was talking
Trump
about?
was there Saturday, but they actually
I
raced.
saw the accident. It was replayed several times.
Steve,
I did not see that.
It was Trump's fault.
No.
I saw it, yes.
It was.
what was it?
It was a crash.
On the
It was
NASCAR.
It was probably Daytona.
Yeah, it was Daytona, and it was NASCAR, and it was a crash.
Okay,
and
there-
Trump
Almost
caused
near
it?
the finish. He just no. Trump had nothing to do with it.
Unfortunately.
The owner-
It was Trump's
One car
fault.
tapped another one from behind.
Very last lap with
And he had to
50
go
yards to go.
Trump
very
cursed
last
the
lap.
track.
Right, it was dramatic too. And the guy's from Michigan, is that right, Dewey?
The
Who's
wreckage
from
ended up
Michigan?
scoring fourth.
No,
The wreckage
no,
ended up
he's
finishing
not from
fourth.
Michigan, but
Oh, that's right. It was really the last.
I mean, there's a Michigan connection of some. Okay, moving along, appropriately dressed tonight. She'll get extra points for that later in the show. Please welcome Amanda.
Michael, I was thinking about the title of the show being White Noise, and it reminds me that my pug, that's what happens all night long. His snoring provides, like, the white noise.
Well, maybe when you put the little dragon suit on him, he'll. Like,
Yeah, I got him a new sweatshirt.
So
I showed everybody, but good to be here.
Can he take on the persona of a dragon?
Yes, he's got a
He
little
can.
suit.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm
he's
just
got
saying
a-
because
Sometimes I've been giving him some CBD dog treats recently, so he's been a little more chill than normal.
Right.
But he can certainly pull off the dragon suit.
Okay.
It's
All
good
right,
for the
sure.
dog's joints, actually. The
It
CBD.
is. It's good for joints. It's good for their anxiety, separation anxiety. It's good for a lot of things.
Yeah.
He looks like he may be involved in a deep involved in an investigation of some kind.
Yes. Absolutely.
You were back. Glad he's back, and
Officer,
as always,
yeah,
please
Sergeant.
welcome
Sergeant.
Steve Miller.
Sergeant Steve
And
Miller.
I'm still here.
Detective.
Still here, and I have a lot to say tonight.
Steve Miller.
It's gonna
Fly
be
like an
good.
eagle. Our poet laureate and hemp French industrialist.
I did see some French hemp.
Did you wear your ascot like I asked you to?
No.
All right,
He
okay.
wanted me
What
to
about
wear a
his
yellow
ass?
dickie on the outside of my.
Oh, that's right. Ascot
Mr.
dickie, right.
They're
Rogers
talking
sweater.
about
It
asses
just
and
wouldn't
dicks
work.
over here.
What?
What's going on over there, Jamie?
I don't
On
wanna
your
know.
side of the room.
Yellow dickie.
Yellow Dickie.
Joel is here. He is representing the hemp corner over here. Did you give your own articles you brought, or those are the
No,
ones?
no,
we-
no.
okay,
This
okay.
is what Steve wants to cover. It's an important issue of driving.
Yes. Do you have some commentary on any hemp updates right now? Not now, but when we come back to you.
There are some things I'm trying to get clear, and that seems to be what's happening in the hemp world these days.
That's kind of like saying this is what's happening in my mind right now. I have some things I need to get clear, so therefore, it's everything to do with hemp. Okay, but that's okay.
Yeah, well,
We'll address that
we'll wing it.
when it's time for the hemp corner.
Thank you.
And of course, we are always excited when we get the dynamic duo back together. Let me put this in front here because this should really be.
Like it.
Even though it's really me and Steve Miller.
You can't really see it. You better back him up a little
Here,
bit.
how's that?
There you go.
All right. Okay.
Who's which? Well,
Dynamic duo. We've got
That's right.
Big Daddy Rick Thompson,
Captain America.
Captain America.
Yes, yes.
Then you get to be.
Thank you for
Iron
being a
Man.
Rick, and of course
Iron Man, that's-
the one
yeah.
who's responsible for everything, and a person that looks good in tights, Jamie Lowell.
Tony Stark. It's all true. Iron Man, Jamie Lowell.
Right there you go.
I don't know about the tights thing, and I'm not sure how you do, but
We've all seen
Jamie
it.
prefers it when people call him Iron Penis, though.
Oh, yes, he
well,
does.
who wouldn't?
I heard it was Iron Cock.
Iron God.
That reminds me, we're live on Facebook for anyone that's listening, and
yeah.
Iron
we
Cock.
encourage you to like and go to the. If you're interested, it's on YouTube as well. Like and hit
Somebody
the
get that
bell
web address.
and
And ask us some questions.
ask some questions. We have people monitoring that. Jim is in charge of monitoring that. Amanda said she's going to tonight, and
Yeah.
Deborah
I
as well. We expect everyone within the room to go share.
should be
this.
well covered then.
If
that's
you
the
ask
case.
a really good question, we may share it live on the air, and Michael will answer it.
Yeah, right. But everyone within the room here should be sharing it unconditionally, where all places they can share. Unabashedly, I would say. The way I
Okay.
describe it.
Michigan
Start with
Swingers
Tommy,
Network.
and we'll telephone it all the way around the room.
All right, so we got some
Now we
topics
all
here
have
that we are
jobs.
going to be addressing.
As long as it's not about
Amongst
a case
others.
that you're currently involved in. And is
Right.
looking for some
Number
free
one, state and task force, federal task forces are out of control.
narrow this down a little bit.
We're not playing the video. We're not playing it yet. We'll come back to it. Okay. 6 questions about traveling with marijuana answered, and we have a former TSA agent
Uh-oh.
who will tell us if the 6 questions are even fair questions,
Exactly.
and then tell us whether or not what the real answers are.
I should have brought my TSA pin. I found it today, my little security pin, when I was cleaning out a drawer, and I'm like, whoa, I bet you they like to see this. I think I have some of my uniform shirts, too. I'm going to wear one next week.
Topic 2
And I'm going to
may.
be checking everybody when they enter.
I don't want to speculate. Topic 2 may lend itself to some role playing, and I can see us getting stuck in that for the rest of the show. But
Oh, yeah.
just to tease the topics a little bit more here,
Step over here, sir.
Right. USDA domestic hemp production program interim final rules. Joel, what are the final rules interimly? Okay, we'll come back to you. Medical marijuana myths and realities, as if there are either. And, of course, topic 5 as designed by Tommy and posted here, but it's straight out of the headline. Don't drive high. Marijuana use and fatal crashes up after legalization.
Bullshit.
Jamie.
Fake news or bullshit are the options. Maybe it's not. Maybe we'll address it. But just
find out that
in the
it's
sense that we can try to be...
We'll examine the data.
We'll examine the data and try to give a conclusion of some kind.
Maybe we'll cite the Michigan State Police Commission on marijuana.
You think so, right?
And driving, yeah. Maybe cite their
That's the most
findings.
reliable, objective source.
Yeah, the Michigan State Police, of course. Yeah, that's what I would say.
They have no dog in that
They
fight.
do have a solid track history.
You know those wands that the police use to try to detect something on your metal or whatever? They have on those wands a test button that they can push and make them go off.
That's true.
Just to give them a reason to push you against the wall. And
that is true.
Yeah,
And
they don't
also,
mind using like a false positive or something like that to arrest you with.
Well, it's just like a test button that they can push on that handle.
The same idea.
You don't need a test button. When you're walking through what they call it, the mag at the airport, you know, the metal detector at the airport, the screener, if they're pissed at you or there's something they don't like about you or whatever, all you got to do is they tap it with their boot. Just tap it, and the thing goes off. You're standing right next to it, just tap it.
Some days when you're at work, you might need a little excitement.
No, it's just,
so
you know.
Those folks, they might need a little excitement, so they stir the pot.
They do.
Sure.
I can promise you that they do that.
Yeah, without a doubt.
It's hardcore.
I was coming back from Phoenix one time, right? I had a pair of tennis shoes.
Dewey, tell everybody. Don't keep it to yourself.
Right
What happened?
Here's the mic. Dewey was coming back from Phoenix. He had a
Never
pair
mind.
of
Take the
tennis
5th. I see where
shoes.
this is going. Never mind. This doesn't sound good. Okay. All right. Good. We should probably go right into this next topic here about the state federal task forces are out of control.
Yeah, let's do that.
Better way to describe maybe multi-jurisdictional task forces combined with state and federal officers are out of control. Are we going to play a video, Tommy? Well, hold on. Should we set it up first? Because this topic and headline it really invokes a lot of different issues citizens deal with. One deals with the liability of officers and whether they're federal agents, state agents, may have all the difference in whether or not they are, what kind of immunity they have, if they're even if you could sue them, and whether they're subject to absolute immunity or no immunity or qualified immunity. And sometimes the distinction is significant, whether there's any jurisdiction over them at all. Another issue that comes out of this is the circumstances surrounding, when an individual gets beat up by a police officer, some kind of physical damage or harm is caused because of the police encounter. And when those circumstances happen, and whether, if at all, there's a frequency by which the opposite happens, where individuals are actually tried to attempt to interact with or assault a police officer. And I want to take a minute to talk about what some of the law is on that. But the circumstances here is that these was there 2 people or 1 people? Let me see. There was this individual was in Grand Rapids, if I'm not mistaken, and he was believed by these special task forces to be someone who he was not, believing that there's a warrant out for his arrest, and the whole thing was caught on video, if I'm not mistaken, Tommy. So let's play that, and we'll come back and comment on it afterwards.
Mistook my identity and assaulted me. They did not have my rights in mind, because instead of admitting that they were wrong, they charged me with 3 felonies.
911 emergency.
Oh my God, they're pounding him in the head. They're going to kill this man.
I had gotten out of work early, walking on the sidewalk on a sunny summer day, going to my internship. I was calling my sister at the time and somewhat distracted by looking at my phone when 2 men approached me, stepped toward me off the curb and said, hey, who are you? I said, I'm James. And they asked me, is that your real name? I said, yes, that's my real name. but one of them stepped behind me, boxed me out, and took my wallet out of my back pocket. So I went to run, to flee, and I was tackled and ultimately beaten pretty severely. I was screaming for someone to call the police.
Oh my God. They're beating him up. Like, they're literally assaulting him.
When I was being choked, I feared for my life, truly, and it was a moment where everything went black, and as far as I know, that is as close as you can get to being dead without being dead. The police came, and then that was when I realized that they weren't muggers, but they were just a police detective and an FBI agent.
In this case, the officers were looking for a fugitive with an extremely broad description. James looked absolutely nothing like the photograph the officers had of the fugitive whom they were looking for.
Do you have any weapons on you at all? No, sir. I thought they were trying to mug me.
I remember being loaded into the back of the ambulance, just being so stricken by what had just happened. I was in a great deal of pain when I got to the hospital, and I remember everyone there, the staff, the nurse, even the officer that was in charge of watching me. As I was cuffed to my bed, I remember him loosening the cuffs and telling me that I shouldn't be there. I went directly from the hospital to the jail cell, where I was, stripped of my clothing, given a jumpsuit, given a mug shot, spent the night on a cold jail cell crying. I called my parents and made it there as soon as they could to bail me out.
Hello, this is a prepaid collect call from
James,
an inmate at Kent County Correctional Facility.
Hello. Hey. We're getting screwed. I'm going to prison, I think. No, I don't think that. We're going to get a bondsman and get you out of there. It's $50,000. I know. This is bad. This is really bad.
After I was released from jail, much to my surprise, the police officers charged me with 3 violent felonies. And I had to go to trial 6 months later. I spent that whole 6 months probably the most scared and the most stressed I've ever been in my entire life, having no idea if I'm going to spend the next 10 years of my life in prison for something that I didn't do. I remember my attorneys telling me, most people don't win against the government, and we know that you did nothing wrong, but if they offer you a plea, you should consider taking it. And they did, and I said no. I said, no, I didn't do anything wrong.
What happened to James is not an isolated incident. Typically, people just don't hear about them for any number of reasons. In a situation like James's, where a prosecutor brings several serious felony charges against someone, they'll typically take a plea deal to avoid going to trial and potentially spending decades in prison. And once they do that, their ability to go after the officers or hold them accountable for violating the Constitution basically evaporates.
When the jury came back, they unanimously acquitted me of all charges. I cried, my family ran towards me, and I remember as I was walking out of the courtroom, one of the jurors ran up to me and she gave me a hug and she said, "I'm so thankful." She said, "I knew the whole time that you did not belong there and these men did terrible things to you."
This case illustrates the lack of accountability that takes place when a police officer or an FBI agent violates someone's constitutional rights. One of the main ways that the government avoids accountability for violating the Constitution is through a doctrine that's called qualified immunity. And it says that a government actor is allowed to violate your constitutional rights. You can't do anything about it unless a court has already decided that the actor's specific actions are in fact a constitutional violation.
After the assault, I dropped out of Grand Valley State University, which I was going to at the time. Parts about everything that I've endured is not just the incident as it happened when it happened, but all the repercussions since then. Missed job opportunities, but I cannot work federal jobs.
For the United States Supreme Court to make things right in James's case and more broadly in constitutional litigation, it needs to revisit this concept of qualified immunity and take a more engaged role in evaluating how difficult it is for plaintiffs to bring lawsuits against government officials who violate the Constitution.
James's case is part of IJ's new project on immunity and accountability. immunity doctrines turn fundamental concepts of American jurisprudence on their head. If citizens must follow the law, the government must also, and that includes following the Constitution. And following the Constitution.
Important, I think. Are we back on? Okay. All right. Video's a little bit long, but worthwhile to make the point, and certainly opens up a lot of grounds for some topics here. I would add a couple things. This is always what happened here is a conversation I've had both with clients and other lawyers and people here within the office, lawyers, about the challenges if one was going to bring a lawsuit against the federal government. You know.
Or the police.
I'm sorry. I meant state acting drug task forces, not the federal government. I'm talking about all these cases from 2008, 2009, where medical marijuana patients were being brutalized.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and people feeling completely violated, and, you know, can I sue them? Can I sue them? Whatnot. And it's not easy to sue, but I would say this. In circumstances where a person has an immunity, like you can hear all day long that these officers have qualified immunity of some kind, so, you know, you heard the standard by which there exists in order to sue someone for a civil rights violation. But that immunity likewise applies to, has the same strength or significance for immunity for MMA patients, for licensed operators, both recreationally and...
well, sure, but that's not how it is.
Well, immunity is immunity, and protections are supposed to be protected, especially if it's an entitlement associated with a license or a badge. So the main point is that you hear how difficult it is to get any redress, generally speaking, for officers because of this qualified immunity. That's number one. Number two, I've seen it quite a bit in Michigan. If you've practiced criminal law, you've had a case or two where there's been a resisting and obstructing kind of case where, you know, of course, someone being arrested, an officer will allege that the arrestee was resisting and obstructing or interfering with, you know. You can understand in circumstances, neighborhood, you know, disruptions and neighbors coming and people don't stop, come here, I told you to come here, you know.
Not good-natured in their detainment.
I saw, as a pattern, in Livingston County, Dewey may have been in there, but it was actually quite pathetic because they were all young black men who were charged with possession of marijuana and resisting arrest, resisting and obstructing, and the fact pattern that they stated when they pled guilty was something to the effect of the officer asked me to get out of the car, and I said, what? And that wasn't fast enough for him or something like that. And then they pulled me out of the car and arrested me and found marijuana in the car. Like some ridiculous. But the point I'm making is it's hard to overcome this simple allegation that an officer says that you resisted in some way. A lot of times if someone is beat up, there may be, sometimes they resisted, so in response of the resisting, they were forced to be injured.
They didn't pull him out, they extracted him.
Extracted him out.
Yeah, it's very technical.
The law in Michigan is interesting because for a very long time, one who was charged with resisting and obstructing could never argue, I was justified in resisting and obstructing. Right. That was never an option.
No.
Your only defense was, I did not resist and I did not obstruct. But then the law changed. It's an important point that if you don't know the person is an officer, if you don't know that they have a legal authority to be there, and they're doing something to you, as was in this particular case, you could not ever be convicted of the crime that may have been the defense at trial for the three, you know, that the jury hung their head on. I would also say that you have a right to defend yourself in those situations with the amount of force reasonably necessary if you're in a constitutionally protected area and the arrest is unlawful, which causes a lot of issues because if you have a police officer uneducated in immunity and they're kicking in your door and you think you're immune and therefore you're in a constitutionally protected area, such as a house, and there's something taking place which you believe is unlawful, you got a conflict there.
Yeah, but that's not even when you're in the right, that's a conflict that you probably aren't going to win.
Well, the cases that made this, the cases that made this precedent are two, and they're similar in the following. There was a guy who was locked up in a house and had locked himself in, and SWAT was there. And they were trying to coerce him out. And it was a high-level, high-intensity scene that everybody knew what was going on, and he was obviously, he was armed, and they were trying to defuse it, whatever, and talk him out. It didn't happen. So the law enforcement officers got a search warrant to go into the house. And they had been communicating with the guy and talking to him, trying to talk him out of so it didn't escalate. And instead of telling him that they had a search warrant, they didn't, and they kicked in the door. They came into the house to go get him, and he didn't, and he fought back. And he got charged with hundreds of crimes, one of which was resisting obstructing. And when he was convicted of that at trial, because the precedent that was made was that he would have no way of knowing that you had a lawful right to be in there. If there's one place he can be and hide up and into without you coming in without some reason or getting the search warrant, it would be his house. So he's protected in there. They could tell you all day long to come out.
Right.
You don't have to. You're in a protected area, theoretically.
Yeah, he won in
right?
court, but I'm sure he got his ass beat, just like this guy.
I know. But here's the important point of this. The thing that won it was this. They said, officers, why didn't you tell the guy that you had a search warrant? You didn't tell him. Why not? For officer safety. Okay? So this example is that when they get into the place, he doesn't know that you have a search warrant, and he fights with them, which brings about this resistant obstructing. But it also...
It literally makes no sense.
And the point was that he would have to know that you were acting with the right legal authority, which they didn't. And it's those elements that justify someone's resistance to an officer. I'm not recommending this at all. This is not legal advice. I'm explaining the interpretation of the law. I always advise to be practical when it's appropriate, and you don't need to start with the police. But this scenario that I'm describing in the law that I'm describing how it should work would only be in the circumstances where you've been probably beaten by the police and would be making this defense in court on the legal technicalities. The point being that it's very difficult to overcome the law's actual force when they're bringing it upon you, and fighting back is probably going to get you beat up and resisting obstructing charges. All right, so
they may kill you.
They may kill you.
And
if you're black, even more so.
Accidents happen.
I mean, especially if you're in the house and they're kicking in the door. My advice, just as a person, would be probably don't fight back. Beat them in court.
They beat a guy up so bad out in Livingston County one time back in the early 80s that they wouldn't let an attorney see him for 3 days.
Right.
And his name, I could go on with his name and the whole show, but yeah, they beat him so bad. When they extracted him from this house, in the back of a station wagon, they had what they called an eye bolt, where they had a dog that they would hook the chain from the dog in the back of the car. They brought him out of that house hogtied, put a dog collar around him, put him in the back of that station wagon, and put his head right to the floor and took him to jail like that, and just beat that boy till you can't imagine how bad he looked. Yeah.
Malice Green, remember?
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people remember the Malice Green case here in Detroit where Budson and Nevers, a dynamic duo.
With their flashlights.
Yeah.
Right?
That was the catalyst, I believe, for the Detroit police no longer using mag lights as service lights.
Can they refuse to let an attorney see a person in jail?
Well, they could do it, but
I mean, they wouldn't even let an attorney in to see him. And I mean, his parents were wealthy people, and so he had an attorney right off the bat, and they would not let him in to see him. And finally, when they did, they took photographs of him. You cannot imagine. Yeah. It's hard to imagine. 8 times as bad as this guy here looks.
Hell, Rihanna beats up her boyfriends worse than that guy got beat up, I tell you. No one should get beaten up by the cops, but, on a scale of 1 to 10, let's take a 2.
Depends on what he did.
All this guy did was run because he was drunk and having a good time.
This guy was just walking down the street.
This guy was just walking down the street.
Right. And he was walking from one job to the other, is what I read. I mean,
yeah, he was.
That's insane.
And I realize that the police need tools. Michael, we talked about that. The police like to give themselves tools so that they can advocate responsibility for their actions, so that they can blame a machine if somebody turns out not to be drunk when they thought that they were. They like to have those tools. But the reality is we still have to hold police officers responsible for their physical conduct.
Yeah.
There are things that are said, there are things that are done, there are actions taken, and there should be no immunity in certain cases from those things. I also think there should be a list made on a statewide level of officers that have violated the public trust by these things, and then they should forever be prohibited from holding a police officer position ever again. They shouldn't just be able to skip from one jurisdiction to the next. Have you not seen that, Michael, in your career?
I was looking at this comment by Peter O'Toole, who's listening, and I want to recognize Peter. I see Daryl, and I see Sharmy as well. Jim Powers would more appropriately say the Sharmy's comment.
What, fuck the police?
Yeah.
That was
But
Sharmy.
To answer to Peter, is it reasonable to... What's that?
It's also a song, so...
That's true, that's true. Is it reasonable to fear for our life in any situation that includes contact with law enforcement?
Is it reasonable?
Reasonable to resist, I believe.
No, is it reasonable to fear for our life?
Oh, okay.
No,
should we fear for our life?
Yeah, of course it's not
Why not?
reasonable.
What do you mean?
I mean, it's reasonable in the respect that you should.
Let me explain. Let me explain
But
something.
it's not reasonable that as a community, as a society,
we shouldn't have to.
That is unreasonable.
But the reality is this: the reality that, as this story demonstrates, and as I took away from the field sobriety testing certification classes that I took, nothing about a traffic encounter is normal. Nothing.
That's true.
People generally driving around don't normally have encounters with law enforcement. They're pulled over. They shouldn't be. And even though they're trained in the field of pulling people over and interacting with them, they really don't know what they're getting themselves into, and they're trained. They're trained in anticipation of it escalating. So their instinct and training is to look for the escalation so they can, because the normalcy of it is what they're trying almost not to see. They're almost looking for something else. So you have this abnormal. It's some kind
Young
of
Frankenstein.
There you go. Thank you. It's not normal. The traffic. There's nothing normal about it, and you have to almost be. I mean, you have to be. You have to be ready for it, I think. You got to be ready for it, and I think that the circumstances, as I try to suggest to people, is while there are certainly rules to utilize during that interaction, you try to be as practical as you can and not let it escalate to the extent possible without incriminating yourself.
So at the time when that police officer pulls you over and you stop, at that very moment, he becomes your Lord and Master because he has the more power than the President of the United States has at that very moment.
Over you, for sure.
Over you.
For sure.
And he can take your life and probably get away with it. At that particular moment, he's the most important person that there is in your life.
Arresting officer, judge, and jury.
So this
executioner.
So this issue reminds me of the Duvall family situation. It's a slightly different angle on batting back and forth between state and federal law, where the sheriff shows up at the house where they have in their minds, a MMA compliant garden, and says, "Oh, it is pretty good, but you got to just do it like this and move some things around," which they do. Say, "Okay, good," and then he comes back as part of the multi-jurisdictional task force as a federal agent and arrests them under federal law.
Didn't that happen here?
At Monroe County. Here, yes.
Okay.
And the father they fought it and everything, and because of that, obviously, things got much worse, and the son got out, but the father's still in prison right now.
And he's an amputee or organ recipient, so he requires special medicine, and
Oh, yeah.
the prison system is not delivering.
He's in
what
some
he
medical
needs
prison, but they still don't really take care of him as he really needs.
because they devalue human life. As soon as you enter that place, you're no longer a human. They even feed them food that's not fit for human consumption.
Oh, they call it a Nutriloaf. I can tell you about it. I never tasted one, but
Is that what they served at the TSA?
No, but my ex was a correction officer in state of Michigan,
no.
and they used that as a form of punishment to people
What, the
if they just wanted to
Nutriloaf?
mess with you. Nutriloaf, yeah.
Yep, put you on a forced diet.
What did you?
It's everything that they serve. They like mash it up, and it's just disgusting. They bake it in like
It's mystery
It's
stuff.
disgusting. It's inedible. And that's what they
The-
serve you 3
the
meals a day for as
Nutriloaf.
long as they decide they want to fuck with you. And they laugh about it. They think it's hilarious.
Oh my gosh.
Dude, I'm telling you, they have all kinds of sadistic things they
When
do.
we talk about other ways we want to make government small, I agree with a lot of them. But one way we need more government is monitoring things like prison guards and the health of our people that are under our control, seniors as well too. We have a lot of opportunity for growth in the United States in areas where it's needed, and the stories like that, which I completely believe every word of.
Dude.
Zappa talked about confinement loaf.
It's called in
Oh,
Michigan they
confinement
call it
loaf, huh?
Nutriloaf,
Yeah.
and
Well, I'm
it's
saying one of the songs
it's supposed to
is called-
contain all the
refers to the
nutrients
confinement loaf.
to keep a body alive.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's like a brick. They say it's just like a nasty brick, and that's what they serve you
Nice.
3 times a day.
It's gonna be tough coming out.
Brick
too.
loaf.
So they can justify.
You
Say,
know-
well, we fed them. We gave them nutrients.
We do live in. We do live. The good news is you see more and more video of police incidences. The question is, was it always like that, or is it just that there's more video now than more opportunities to film it? That's the question. Is it? Has
No,
always
this goes
been this
back
much?
20, 25 years.
Well, that's what I'm
this
saying.
Nutriloaf stuff.
There's so much more video now of it that's being captured. Of course, everyone's armed with a video camera now, so it's so much more prevalent. But also the level of even police forces themselves having body cams, vehicles being equipped with
Michael, if
in-car
they want to
cameras.
fuck with you in prison, you
Oh,
don't
that's-
think
yeah,
that the cops know
oh,
exactly what
oh,
corner of the
course,
prison
oh.
they can drag you
Of
into
course,
and
of
mess you
course.
up, and nobody
Yeah.
can see that?
Force feed you the Nutriloaf.
They know exactly how to.
I mean,
manipulate
listen.
that.
There's a.
Could get
It
bad.
depends. I mean, listen.
Yeah,
it
you
can-
you are definitely
The
under their.
protein loaf is also pretty popular.
Yeah.
I understand.
There's a. Some places, whatever my advice would be, wouldn't work. I would think. It doesn't matter. I mean, if they're on video, then they know that being on video, no matter what they do to you, it's going to come back. That's the idea. Unless they're able to destroy the
Yeah,
tape.
my camera wasn't working.
Well, which is
fell off during pursuit.
It happened to turn off before
But
the
no matter,
Epstein.
but no matter how terrible it is,
That's what I'm saying.
no matter how terrible it is, if it's something that's automatic, it should be. But that doesn't mean they don't know how to cut it off or
They
something
know
gets
how to
sideways.
manipulate it. Right, Steve?
Does anybody in here think there's a truth to this? I've heard that police, the majority of them that you see in these guards, are bald. Now you just
Mine was.
pay attention the next time. The majority of them that you see are bald, and I was told. I mean, in my thoughts
police?
was from steroids.
Majority of police are bald, you say?
All of them.
They're all
All of
bald.
all
Can
the
we
majority
get
of
a-
the
can we get
police.
a-
Yes.
Can we get a quick shot of
They're all
Dewey's hair?
skinheads?
Only a man that has a
Steve
head
has
of
a
hair
full
like
head of
that.
hair over here.
That's
Is
Look
that
at that-
why
look
you
at
had
that
to
head of
leave
hair.
it
Look at
out
that.
earlier?
Seriously.
Steve got out before the
Steve
baldness
left
set in.
before all the hairs were removed.
Grew
from his
back
head.
after he-
That's
after-
And
That's
they,
why he retired.
And they told me,
Only someone
that
that's rocking a dude like that
it's in
did they
case
ever
we
say-
get in a fight. We don't want any hair, so that we'll have to. They can drag us down with our hair.
Is that true,
And
Steve?
Steve, tell us
And
about
I said bullshit. I said they're on steroids, and that's their excuse for being on them steroids.
Speak into the microphone, Steve.
Come on, Steve.
Skinhead police. What do you got, Steve?
Just
Well, I
rumor.
don't know about all that.
Just
but,
rumor.
What do you think about Dewey's hair?
Does- is it true that your dick shrinks when you use
Cops do have short
steroids?
hair because that is
That's a good question.
that's
a good
uniform
question.
requirement.
To
That's,
answer Jamie's question.
standards of appearance.
We'd like to answer to Jamie's
What's the question, Jamie?
Is it true that your dick shrinks when you use steroids as a bald cop?
I don't know.
That's another
I've
reason
never
for them
used
having an
steroids.
attitude.
But I have heard that rumor about steroids, but
Well,
I don't
didn't
know that
Alex
to be true
Rodriguez
because I
use
don't know. I've
steroids
never
all
done.
those years, and they just come out with that.
A-Rod was actually a way to compensate.
I think not, because he's got J-Lo.
Hey,
If he had like
Well,
shriveled
it's not-
genitals, would he have J-Lo?
Well, listen, we
No,
this is a riveting discussion, but we do have to take a break.
So I'm gonna
We've got to take a
break
break.
time.
Alan's on the line, so he's going to come back after the break and do
See what Alan thinks about A-Rod and
appeal
J-Lo.
court update
Hyde Eisner.
or appellate update.
Oh,
So that'll be
Alan
fun.
upset?
And
Alan's got some shit to say after the break.
he will. There's going to be some shit to
Probably
say.
maybe a court case or two.
And maybe we'll ask him about his opinion on bald, small penis police officers.
Yes, we'll ask him what he thinks about
That's
that.
very weird.
It's a cliffhanger.
There's a
Very
cliffhanger.
weird.
I think the more aggressive, the smaller it
hanger.
is.
You're listening to Planet Green Tree.
I really believe that.
The Planet Green Trees Show.
Join the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association today. MichiganMedicalMarijuana.org. The MMMA is focused on the well-being and safety of medical marijuana patients. The MMMA site provides the most comprehensive and up-to-date news on legal issues, politics, research, cultivation, as well as the various strange products and methods of cannabis use. Come join the discussion with the most knowledgeable and passionate advocates in Michigan today. MichiganMedicalMarijuana.org.
Whoops! Did state lawmakers accidentally legalize marijuana in Ohio? Some top law enforcement officers say yes. Columbus City Attorney says the decision is based on complications after the state legalized hemp. On July 30th, Ohio Governor Mike DeWine signed Senate Bill 57 into law. It legalizes hemp in Ohio and changes the definition of marijuana to exclude hemp based on the amount of THC. Now we have to be able to distinguish the difference between hemp and marijuana, said Vice President of the Ohio Fraternal Order of Police. That is not possible for a human being to do. That has to be done through crime analysis. The executive director of the Ohio Prosecuting Attorneys Association agrees. This bill de facto legalizes marijuana in Ohio, at least for the time being, said Louis Tobin. We raised this concern with legislators during debate of the bill. It's disappointing those concerns were rejected. Whoops. Anybody want to go to Cedar Point?
An important and historical farm crop in American agriculture is returned after having been classified as a controlled substance and illegal. On December 20th, 2018, the President signed the Farm Bill, also known as the Agriculture Improvement Act of 2018, into law. The signing of the act was great news for the hemp industry, which amended the definition of marijuana in the Federal Controlled Substances Act. Hemp is now defined as the plant, Cannabis sativa L, and any part of the plant, growing or not, with less than 0.3% THC concentration on a dry basis. The plant itself is no longer a controlled substance. Hemp is one of the most versatile plants on earth. From clothing, fiber, paper, building materials, hempcrete, biofuels, CBD, and medical uses, it has been a part of America's industry for over 200 years. Even the United States Constitution was drafted on hemp paper. The time is now. If you're thinking of getting in the farming or processing of hemp, contact our global experts, legal, and consultation teams to make sure that you're on the right road when you venture into the new hemp industrial revolution. Michigan Hemp Industries has been a leader and advocate for the return of the hemp industry, so come be a part of the new revolution in agriculture in Michigan.
Bill Schuette led the charge against medical marijuana, and even after the will of the voters was decided and the support was enormous, he still continued to fight against the will of the voters, keeping patients from the medicine that they need. So I think it's important that we all speak up on what we think about this initiative. But when the voters have their say, their will must stand.
We're here live at the exclusive provisioning center in Ann Arbor for the first day of recreational marijuana sales. We're waiting for the 10 o'clock open. We've got about an hour, but there's plenty of great folks here with us in line. And like I told my buddy Bob, hell, I've been waiting for 44 years for this. Another hour's not going to kill me, especially to be in the company of such excellent people who've been waiting just as long as I have. As I had pointed out earlier, this is a fantastic event, a culmination of decades of hard work, jail time, suffering, sacrifice, and a lot of positivity. So shout out to the medical marijuana community here in the state of Michigan for making this happen. Let's see here, guys. It's your boy, Uncle Jesse. There's the front end of the line before the turn into the store, exclusive provisioning center here in Ann Arbor, man. Again, I keep pointing it out because it's a celebration. This culmination of decades of hard work from some of the OGs, from a lot of advocates and activists. A lot of people have gone to jail. A lot of people have been arrested and treated like shit, had their lives devastated for simple possession. And here we are. Look at this. Look at this, baby. Look at this line. All the way down. All for the sale of adult use cannabis here in the state of Michigan. But I definitely wanted to make sure that I was up here today to document this historic occasion. As I said, man, lots of hard work, lots of trials, tribulations, sacrifices were made in order to have this day.
I know I'm with the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association, and we were going to get up here, and then we were debating because of the weather, and then I was like, FTS, baby! We did it, right? So thank every one of you for coming out today. Thanks for making marijuana legal. Let's get it, guys. Make some noise, come on!
So right on, man, right on. It's happening. It is happening here. Exclusive provisioning in Ann Arbor. Legal adult use sales. Coming to a place near you soon, right? And shout out to all the OGs who worked hard, like Adam Brooks and Michael Komorn and Rick Thompson and all these guys that have been busting their ass trying to make this happen for decades. You know, shout out, tip of the hat to them guys. So we don't know that it's overpriced yet, but we do support local farmers. As a matter of fact, to the degree that we hope that most of the provisioning centers are utilizing the emergency rules, allowing us to buy right from the caregivers and the local farmers through the processors and the growers, man. So, you know, yes, we absolutely do support local farmers. I, for one, believe that is the heartbeat and the blood life of all marijuana in Michigan. And until our market is fully saturated and stocked, we're going to need these caregivers. So don't think they're going anywhere anytime soon. So again, guys, we're here. Exclusive Provisioning Center in Ann Arbor. Here for the opening day of recreational sales. Look, we're here. Yeah. Yep, we are here. Reporting for the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association on this historic day. Woo!
Here's Michael Komorn with more Planet Green Tree.
Look at YouTube, and we've got a lot of good, solid entertainment here in the room. And let's continue with that, with our next topic.
I thought there was a cliffhanger.
There is a cliffhanger.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. That's right. We have.
Where the
Alan,
where the fuck did you go?
How dare I? First of all, let me say this: as I begin every show, there's usually several people that I want to give shout-outs to. One is Dewey, that I forget to do often, and Alan Peisner's usually on there. And when I forget to, he'll remind me the next day by making sure that I'm felt to feel badly about that. But I'm glad he's calling in tonight. He is really a good friend and great lawyer, and he loves to give the appellate update. So without further ado, let's...
No, he's gone.
What do you mean?
What?
See, all that
Call him
nice,
back.
all those nice things you
Let's
said.
call him.
Let's call him. All right, let's call him. We're calling him.
Perhaps it was offensive.
Yeah, he might.
Oh, there he is. He's back. He's
back. What a trickster.
What a trickster.
Hello, Planet Green Trees people.
Like Roger Stone.
Hey, Alan.
Right.
Hi, Amanda.
Not
I have an
fickle at all,
appellate
Alan.
update.
Well, let's hear it.
Well, right to business.
All
Alan.
right. Good evening, everybody. Bum 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 bum. It's time for the appellate update. This appellate update is sponsored by ComornLaw.com. 800-656-3557 for all your marijuana and criminal defense needs. The case I'd like to talk about briefly was released for publication 1 week ago today, February 13th, 2020, and it's the case of the people of the state of Michigan versus Thomas Moorman from Algiers Circuit Court. It's from the Court of Appeals, and if anyone wants to look it up, the Court of Appeals number is 349282. It's a published decision or for publication that deals with the issue of whether the smell of marijuana is probable cause to search a motor vehicle. This is the most recent decision on this point. Now, the facts of this case are that the defendant was driving a motor vehicle 1 month before the new law, MRTMA, took effect. The traffic stop took place in November 2018, and the officer pulled over the defendant's car for speeding. Once he pulls the car over, he smells marijuana. The officer claims that the defendant initially denied having marijuana, and he decides he's going to search it anyway, which time the defendant produces his marijuana card, and he's also got he's a caregiver, he's got 5 patients as well. The officer denied seeing those cards and the numbers, but they somehow did appear on the police report. Anyway, the officer searched the car, and in addition to finding marijuana, he found a firearm, some pills, so he was prosecuted for CCW and these pills. Doesn't appear he was prosecuted for the marijuana, according to the Court of Appeals opinion. But anyway, he moved to suppress the evidence against him, arguing the smell of marijuana didn't provide probable cause to search the motor vehicle. Doesn't provide evidence of a crime because here he showed his patient card. He had a license to, or his caregiver card. He had a license to have the marijuana for himself and 5 patients. And so the police officer shouldn't have searched the motor vehicle. The reason the officer gave for searching the motor vehicle was to see if the person was in compliance. So obviously, although he denied seeing the card, he must have. Anyway, the trial court denied this motion to suppress the evidence. It said that People versus Anthony, which is another recent case on the People of smell of marijuana, controlled, and that it's still probable cause to search a motor vehicle. The Court of Appeals in this opinion said, well, that's wrong because this case involved the smell of green marijuana and Anthony involved the smell of burnt marijuana. It's a terrible opinion. In Anthony, the trial court actually did suppress the evidence because it didn't believe the police officers. It thought the police officers were lying at the hearing. The Court of Appeals reversed on that, which was just crazy. But it was a burnt marijuana smell case. This is a green marijuana smell case, and they likened the case more to Kazmierczak, which is an old case from 2000, which says the smell of marijuana by someone trained to recognize the smell is probable cause to search a motor vehicle. And the Court of Appeals relied on that in this case for saying the trial court was right in not suppressing the evidence. Only it said that the officer had probable cause because the defendant lied to him initially about having the marijuana with him. And that was their sole justification, that because he lied about having the marijuana, he should have been honest. That provided the probable cause to believe that there might be a crime committed, and they allowed him to search the vehicle.
Lie to the police.
Terrible.
Probable cause.
How do you saying that they determined that there was a lie or not, Alan?
That he was lying?
Yeah.
I didn't understand the question. Say it again, please.
What was the determination by the court that prior to the search of the vehicle that there was a lie that was told?
Okay, he denied initially having marijuana when the officer asked him about the green smell.
And then he changed his mind later on?
Right.
Yeah, according to the facts of his opinion. But the officer may have been lying, too, because he claimed he didn't present the card at the time, or he didn't remember, but in fact the card number is on the police report. So he was lying about that. So I hope this case goes to the Supreme Court and gets reversed because the smell of marijuana should not be probable cause to search a motor vehicle. That alone should not be probable cause because marijuana is now legal for people 21 years old and older. And this case needs to be reversed, but this case is out there. It's for publication, and until it's reversed, I offer all our listeners the free advice to be very careful when you travel with marijuana, which I notice is also, by the way, one of the topics of this broadcast. It's number 2, 6 questions about traveling with marijuana answered. Be very careful. Do what you can when you travel with marijuana to conceal the smell. Use a glass jar. Seal it with wax or ship it to your destination ahead of time. But do not, do not be surprised if they want to search if they smell it. And so that's the conclusion of this appellate update. We haven't had very many medical marijuana cases in the Court of Appeals. And I want to thank KomornLaw.com for sponsoring this appellate update. Again, 800-656-3557 for all your medical marijuana or marijuana needs, whether it's for criminal defense or business needs or any criminal defense needs in general. Call KomornLaw.com.
Alan, let me ask you a couple of questions, because you have some perspective on some of the other cases that have addressed the smell issue and what is probable cause and what is not. The query of whether or not the smell of marijuana will remain probable cause, I think, is beginning to get answered, it would seem, or maybe from the law that exists and is analyzed, not yet in the context of marijuana being legal. We haven't really seen that yet. Am I right? Like there hasn't been a situation where, okay, this culpable behavior, the smell of marijuana, with no other evidence of bad driving or anything like that, warrants someone to search a vehicle. We have not seen that. You see what I'm saying? In the age of in contemplation of it being legal. That's number one. I'm talking about marijuana in the statutory context of what that means. Okay, but then we also don't have a case that analyzes the perspective that the cannabis sativa L plant is no longer per se marijuana, and by default would be hemp, something that is not a plant defined within the controlled substance. So there's those two paradigm shifts in the law that have yet to catch up to a fact pattern that has allowed a court to make that distinction. It would be nice. It would be nice
if we were older.
If before what we would anticipate that law to be shut down because of hemp and because of recreational marijuana being passed in the state, which would have to be no longer smell of those two things as probable cause of a crime. But it would be nice if on the way out, a court of appeals, a Supreme Court found Kaczmarek to be appalling to the principles of due process and Fourth Amendment jurisprudence. I don't know if that'll ever happen, but under the odd text, under the pretext of medical marijuana or general Fourth Amendment law, I think after, of course, in the context of legalization, it should end it. What do you have to say about that?
The problem with Kaczmarek, the Michigan Supreme Court in that case said that the smell of marijuana is probable cause to suit your motor vehicle by someone recognized it. That was a decision reversing another decision from the Michigan Supreme Court that it came out 3 years earlier that it said just the opposite. Smell alone was not probable cause to search a motor vehicle.
And you know what
So
the
that's
distinction was?
relatively new.
Yeah, because what had happened is there was a long history of cases that said the smell of contraband. Because the cases that held the precedent up until Kaczmarek, this is interesting, were alcohol prohibition cases. The case that was overturned, or the case that was relied upon that Alan speaks of 3 years before, relied upon a 1930-something case that said prohibition officers could not go into a building where they smelled alcohol without a search warrant. Okay? So that was the rule. Smell alone in a building of contraband without a search warrant. If you went in without a search warrant, violation. That was the law for all things until they said, wait a second, a car. It's not a building. Not a building. And we have exceptions for vehicles because they're, by virtue of...
Because they're mobile.
Mobile as being not exigent, but a new category of protected property and Fourth Amendment purposes. And the distinction, Alan, I would say is that the case that preceded Kaczmarek didn't draw that distinction, and Kaczmarek broke from the principle of needing a warrant to search for smell alone. They did not disrupt that for homes. They just disrupted it for vehicles. That's the tragedy of that case. You agree or disagree?
Yeah, I agree. The Supreme Court shifted a couple members at that time during the Engler administration and went from, even though it's supposed to be nonpartisan, it went from a Democratic-based majority to a Republican majority when we lost Dennis Archer, who had resigned to become mayor of Detroit, and another judge, I can't remember his name offhand. No. But anyway, they do what they want to do, and they write their justification for it afterwards. And Kaczmarek's a terrible decision that we've had to live with for 20 years. For 20 years, we have had to live with the fact that the courts are still saying the smell of marijuana is probable cause to search a motor vehicle, and that's despite the fact that we have the MMA and now MRTMA, and it shouldn't be, but it still is. And I urge anyone...
Alan, that case does not say MRTMA. That doesn't contemplate MRTMA law as a...
No, it doesn't. You're right. It doesn't...
And we haven't had a case... We haven't had a case yet that considers that... I represent that individual, Aaron Clark, on appeal to the Court of Appeals, where a trial court judge in Roscommon said, smell alone under the... it hasn't been addressed since Kaczmarek in Michigan, and it needs to be in light of the MMA. Didn't even talk about recreational and dismissed the case. That argument before the Court of Appeals, unfortunately, they kind of punted. They said there's other issues to be addressed before we get to that, and they didn't really say one or the other. But that trial court opinion is pretty good in terms of narrowing
Yes.
the ability. And so I'm saying, like, I think on the horizon here, it's going to be very difficult. It's been going to be like all these cases, like the Aaron Clark case, could have said, okay, we're going to remand it because there's other things that need to be fleshed out. But for all purposes, if this was under the recreational law, there'd be no probable cause. This case, this Mormon case, could have said blah 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 blah, current existing thing, but under the all of them could, should, would be that way. It's almost, it's
Right.
almost.
They don't want to give advisory opinions, but you're correct in your analysis of this case. This case took place 1 month before MRTMA took effect, but in effect, it shouldn't have made any difference because he had his own patient card and 5 caregiver cards for his registered patients, so he had every right to have the marijuana, and it shouldn't have been probable cause. Also, the facts don't say he was doing a search for compliance, but they don't say that they asked him how much marijuana he had or whether or not he was in compliance, and it was more of a fishing expedition, which they always like to do whenever they smell marijuana.
Here's a problem I have with that. The idea that there's such thing as a compliance check, that I need to search the car to see if they're in compliance, does not fit. I know that that's what they want to say. I know that that's what. How do I know? I don't know. You don't know if they're in compliance or not. But there's got to be some evidence beyond smell that would suggest that they could potentially even possess an amount, or they have to say something that would suggest that. Which is another reason why people who take Alan's advice in terms of being careful when they travel should also be mindful of the things that they say and the things that they admit. It's very easy to say, I don't discuss my medical marijuana activity. It's privilege, and my lawyer told me not to answer any questions. Respectfully, officer, am I free to leave?
Right.
I'm
Exactly. To that
popular.
effect.
I'm not discussing my day.
Yeah. I appreciate your concerns for me, but I don't. My lawyer told me I'm not supposed to discuss my day with you.
My lawyer said not for me not to say anything.
Yeah.
He was very explicit. He said, "Just sit there, stupid."
And just crack the window this much so
right.
they can't even get in there.
In fact, my lawyer said if you really have a lot of questions, you should call him. Here's his number.
Yeah.
He said he'd love to talk to you.
Yeah.
Steve, what happens when someone says that?
Says what?
Yeah, good question.
Officer?
Officer, my lawyer said I'm not supposed to talk to you. Here's his card. Will you call him for me?
No. Step out of the vehicle. I smell marijuana. I'm going to lock you up for driving while impaired by marijuana. Step out, please. I'm not running any tests, and I'm not asking you
What
to.
if you're
I
just
smell
smelling
it.
yourself,
I
Steve?
know you're fucked up, and I'm arresting you. That's what's going on, people.
Well, here, this
Hold on, but the Michigan, listen, the
You
Michigan,
heard it. You heard it.
hold on,
Sergeant
the
Steve
Michigan
Miller.
State Police's report on whether or not there should be a per se number acknowledges that it's very, very difficult to establish probable cause to arrest somebody for impaired driving. And the tools that they have are very, very limited, and they need more.
Limited.
They're trying to send people to do DRE training. The arrest that you just described, Steve, probably occurs all. It's probably.
I'm
it's
telling
exact-
you, it
it's
is going to
probably-
get that simple for them.
No, I'm saying that is exactly what is really makes the arrest, and all the other stuff is just, frosty.
Yeah, it's just
just
fluff.
superfluous.
Yeah.
Kind of like other
Just
stuff. that's on
stuff for
top
their
of-
reports.
Fluff, right? Exactly.
And most people aren't going to fight it. They're going to get into the court system, and they're going to plea out to something.
Do a little probation.
To end it quickly. Michael will fight probably several of them.
Yes.
As it's going to become more and more. But that is my theory, is that
Where's Jamie and Rick? Where'd they go?
the police in general are going to, one, go up to a car. They're going to smell marijuana, whether it's green marijuana or burnt marijuana. And they're going to say, you know what, the boss has been on me to make some arrests. And so I can smell the marijuana. I know this guy is a user. I have enough little things I saw in his driving. The person will more than likely get out of the car and do the sobriety tests against Michael's advice. But they're going to do it because most people are compliant. And they're going to get locked up because the cop knows that when they send in that blood in for testing, it's going to show positive for THC. Their arrest is good. It's a good, cheap arrest. It keeps the bosses off their back. I'm telling you, it is going to go to that simple of terms for these guys. They're going to like doing them better than they do drunks because drunks have a lot of hassle with those. These won't even be a hassle because the marijuana people won't even be, they don't act like a drunk. So it's an easy arrest all the way around. They're going to get kudos from the boss, and they're going to get that special assignment they put in for because they're out there arresting several of these. And it's going to get that simple. They're going to smell it. They're going to know the guy uses. They're going to therefore know he tests positive for marijuana on a blood test, and they got their arrest. It's going to occur like that. I guarantee it. It's going to start happening.
Yes, Steve, but what they need in addition to that is they need to demonstrate bad driving to show that the person was under the influence. The fact
They're going to
the
say
person
that
has
they,
marijuana.
very simple. I saw him go over the fog line 3 times, and then he didn't fail to use his turn signal when I followed him northbound on Lily Road. And
of course, you have all this on your in-car video, right?
Yes. Those are all simple things that most people make mistakes when they're going down the road. It's easy to show that they committed a few violations that probably are due to their impairment.
By
Could have been a
what?
bee in the car.
They're just not a shitty driver.
Yeah.
What's that, Michael?
Impairment by what? By alcohol or by some other?
By marijuana.
The devil's lettuce.
Yeah.
Because as soon as they go up to that car after they see these few violations that this is a car worth stopping, and they smell the marijuana, boom, I got me an arrest. They're going to make it these guys will go to it that simple.
I mean,
they'll
as much
run
fun
through
as we're having, Steve's absolutely right. I mean,
I am.
He is
He
right.
is usually correct.
And they don't.
And I'm telling you this because if I was still one, I know what I would be doing.
And we're lucky to have him on the inside.
That's right.
I say with not by ego.
Oh.
It's a bad way to start a sentence.
Yeah. We know it's coming.
But I feel like I could beat that case.
Oh, I know you can beat that case, but my point is, most people aren't going to fight the case.
That's true.
They are going to take some sort of a plea.
So they need to be educated about it. That I mean, especially because this. And they may think, I mean, but the logic that follows is that you don't have to take these tests, and they'll threaten you with a civil infraction if you don't take them, and you'll take them, or they won't even tell you that, and you'll take them. Then they have you.
Right.
And then you're angry and complaining the whole way that I really did pass them. You know what I mean? Or
And
I
those
really
tests are all totally subjective.
Of course they are.
Totally
Of course they are.
subjective.
But they
Always
it
to the
makes
police
it even
favor.
worse. It makes it even worse. Now they didn't think they were impaired. They complied and took the test. They were completely subjective. They thought they passed it. They have more evidence against them. Now it's a harder case. Oh, you did terrible on the test. You said you missed this, this, and this. You're like, but I didn't.
It's always going to be
now
terrible
you're dealing
on
with
the test.
his word versus your word. You know.
Exactly.
But it goes back to the real advice, if I could offer any, which is the whole criminal process is going to be a police officer's word, most likely, against yours in most cases.
You are correct, sir.
There are the limited times where it's neighbor to neighbor or, civilian against civilian. But if it's a drug or driving case, it's always going to be a police officer usually. And for driving purposes, if you know what tests are not mandated to take, and so I say it like this, if in a driving case you're dealing with the police officer's word against yours, and it's their word against yours, and there might be some video and your word against theirs, and they have video of you failing tests, which you could never pass in the first place, and it's their word against yours, that's bad. If they get you failing tests and then being able to judge you on those failing tests, and it's their word against yours, and they have that, it's bad. You understand what I'm saying? If it's just your word against theirs, and nothing else, it's a different dynamic.
Because I tell you what, I mean, stone sober, you put me on some of those balance tests.
Yeah,
I am not going to do well on them because as I've gotten older, my balance has gotten worse. I think that's just a thing of aging.
Me too.
And so, I'm not going to pass those tests stone cold sober.
We had a call from a guy this
cane
week.
in the car.
We had a call from a guy this week. I think he went with somebody else, which he'll probably call us back later when he realizes he made a mistake. But I remember him saying during the field sobriety test, the officer asked him to stand on one leg, and he said,
He had he had some sort of an issue. He had vertigo.
Vertigo. A diagnosis that deals specifically with
It's,
inner ear.
inner ear, and throws your balance off
Right.
and makes you dizzy.
So-
and
right.
some people can't even do anything.
Yeah, it's rather. Jim, what do you think about that? Do you get past a test for
No.
field sobriety?
No, but they're not. Steve already said they're designed for you not to pass. I mean, Steve, how many people would you take out of a car and then have them do field sobriety tests and they wouldn't go to jail?
Well, they're going. Occasionally you
Yeah.
do have one where you're like, okay, yeah, he's sober. I'm gonna, let him back in the car. You do a PBT just to be sure, but
Right.
generally, you're pulling them out of the car. You got a, strong odor of alcohol coming from the car.
Yeah.
You can tell the person's fucked up. They're going.
Yeah, they're going to jail.
9 times out of 10,
Here we go.
they're going.
Jamie Lowell, where are you? Don't drive high. Marijuana use and fatal crashes up after legalization. So says. Is this AAA?
This directly impacts Jamie Lowell.
This
so-
was based. This article is based on statistics out of Washington State before and after legalization, and what they're saying is that the numbers jumped. So they did 5 years prior to legalization. 9% of drivers involved in fatal crashes tested positive for THC. What they failed to indicate here, most likely, is that these people probably also had alcohol in their system, would be my guess. After legalization from 2013 to 2017, the most recent data year the data was available, the percentage more than doubled to 18%.
Alan, did you read the study? Alan Pizer, are you still there?
Yes.
Did you read
Yes.
the study?
I haven't read this particular study, but it's typical of many other studies where they try to selectively state facts and statistics to make it appear that marijuana is associated with bad driving. And what they don't say is, in any of these cases, is how long before the driving the person used it, or how much they had in their system, or how long a user they were. All factors which can affect a person's driving under marijuana, and the reason they cannot establish a per se level like they can for alcohol. Was that too long a sentence?
No.
Are you still there?
No, we're not here.
Okay. All right.
The only thing I can say to this is that back when I did work the road and I would stop somebody, if I smelled marijuana in the car, I was arresting them most likely for the marijuana they had in the car and not for their driving. I never came across anybody that was impaired by marijuana. I didn't see it on the road. Now, alcohol's another story. You can tell when someone's fucked up on alcohol, but pardon my language. But I never arrested anybody for being solely because of marijuana impairing their ability to drive. Now, there was probably people that had both in their system, alcohol and marijuana.
Yeah, but you still weren't arresting them for the marijuana.
No. Like I said, if I smelled marijuana in the car, I was most likely arresting them for the possession of the marijuana, not the driving.
See, what the results show is that the percentage of drivers involved in fatal crashes each year in Washington State who were THC positive, based on both actual test results and multiple implications of missing values. What this means is that in the fatalities or in the fatality crashes, drivers were found to have 18% or what is 18% from 10% greater had THC in their system. It doesn't mean that the THC in the system impacted the crash. It's just it would make sense that
It's just a correlation.
Yeah, but it doesn't say that what other drugs they have in their system.
No, it does not.
And it doesn't say that it just tested positive for THC. And we know that the number that the presence of it in your bloodstream has no impact on your impairment. and the level of it in your bloodstream has no impact on impairment. This is contradictory and gives us no insight whatsoever into the data. The question is, what else is in their system, and what were the circumstances that caused the deaths? I mean, if you have, they could have had a, greater than normal snowstorm that brought about a certain number of deaths that year, and just so happens that because, true accidents by weather conditions, and it turned out that they had THC in their system just because it's legal there. You know what I mean?
I had a conversation, it was around the campaign time, Proposal 1 campaign time. I had a conversation with a prosecutor from a county south of Detroit. I think the guy's a judge now, but I had this similar discussion with him about this. And, when I said, well, I never came across anybody that I saw worthy of being arrested for being impaired by marijuana when my years of work on the road. And he was like, oh, yeah? Well, I have a stack full of those cases on my desk right now resulting from accidents. I'm like, well, did they all have alcohol in their system as well? Oh, well, yeah. He kind of drops his head. No, well, yeah. See, they always want to throw the blame on marijuana. Don't take any of the glory from this alcohol that we've glorified all these years, and that's okay. When there's problems or what, marijuana wants to become legal, it's going to cause all these traffic problems. Alcohol will continue to be that causes the traffic problems and the fatal crashes and everything. And just because somebody has a combination of both in their system, don't point right to the marijuana and blame that, and that's what they do. It's exactly what people do in general, or people allow the opposition to convince them that this is the case. And
Steve, I want to emphasize or comment on one thing you said, that where people were found with a combination of marijuana and alcohol, they blame it on the marijuana. There have been studies done that estimate the danger of various substances in driving activities and causing accidents by studying the number of accidents in an area, measuring with traffic cameras. For example, it's found that driving while pregnant increases the risk of an accident by 40%, whereas driving with marijuana in the system, whether or not that person was under the influence, it increases the accident likelihood by 20%. Of course, we don't outlaw pregnant driving, even though it's a higher risk. But when you combine alcohol and marijuana, the risk went up to like 300%. It's just incredible, and I certainly want to discourage any of our users from ever trying that combination, because it can be an unpredictable combination.
And like I always tell people, marijuana is like any other medication. It doesn't mix well with alcohol. It just as a lot of other medications don't mix well with alcohol. It turns the effects of alcohol, makes it even more intense, worse impairment, blackouts, things like that. When you mix marijuana with alcohol, yes, people who do that are doing it for one reason, and that's to get fucked up.
Yep.
It's interesting because that headline is rather misleading, because the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the research done from that fine, esteemed organization that is the one that's formalized the field sobriety testing, the standardized field sobriety testing, they've concluded that there's no evidence to suggest that that marijuana use is even close to the same dramatic increase chances of creating an accident. This is their own study. They did this roadside survey of alcohol and drug use by drivers, and driving drunk obviously increases the chance of getting into an accident, but there's no evidence to suggest that the same was true for marijuana use. Federal agencies' studies found. This has been an ongoing thing, and they acknowledge that THC is the most common ingredient that is found in car crashes. No correlation whatsoever across the board. There's no direct connection of it being linked and or causation of it. Ongoing studies. So, it's, a lot of the studies out of Washington State seemingly have been driven, almost like the Colorado Rocky Mountain studies that, they're
Yeah,
predetermined
that
to
one.
produce negative research against cannabis. I don't know. I'm looking for the statistics that show the amount of drunk driving crashes and or reduction in alcohol-related deaths in each of these states where legalization happened. I think there's data to support that, Jim. Haven't we reviewed that before?
We have.
What's your recollection of that?
That it is consistent in states that legalize marijuana that traffic deaths tend to decline, marijuana abuse and hospitalizations for marijuana or alcohol abuse decline, and it doesn't cause any of the negative effects that they say it will before it's legal. So this is just more nonsense. They don't cite any of their sources here. It's just some study AAA did. So what was the sampling size? Where was the sample taken from? Was it a certain part? What states was it right before or right after legalization hit? I have so many questions about the data, and at the end of the day, these studies, based on their sources, can absolutely say one thing or another. It all depends on how the study's conducted, and there's just not enough information here. I mean, this to me feels just like more fear-mongering bullshit. We all know that, AAA did a study how many years ago, you guys, and said that in their study, they had drivers drive while they were under the influence of marijuana to see how it would impact their driving, and they said the impact was somewhat negligible, if I recall correctly.
So it was not as significant.
Right.
Jim, that was done a couple of years ago. There was also a test done by NHTSA, National Highway Traffic Safety Association, that said the same thing. I must comment, Jim, it looks like you got contact lenses. You're not wearing glasses anymore, and you're looking very handsome and dapper in that sports jacket
Alan,
there.
Alan, you're so nice. You're so nice, Alan. Not as nice as Steve in his Komorn Law sweatshirt.
But we missed seeing Jamie. Jamie and Rick Thompson left, and we need those two handsome gentlemen in the picture too.
I think they're coming back.
They're somewhere.
Maybe.
Well, there's. I'm sorry.
So this is like they have wanted to find something that they can make an issue after legalization occurs.
And we knew
and
this
they
was
just
gonna be
keep
it.
focusing, they keep hammering
You know
on
what's
this
next?
driving. It's like they're creating the problem.
But we knew that. And you know what's next? Because this is only round one. Round two is when they start telling us how marijuana is causing a negative impact on our kids.
Oh, yes, you're right, Jim.
So that part's coming. Don't worry. I've already started to hear rumblings about it.
But, again, and this goes back to our discussion on 6 questions about traveling with marijuana.
Do we need Deb in here? If we do this without her, isn't she going to get mad? We should probably get her in. Do we have time to make
We'll
sure
get
that
her.
she...
But-
Tell her we just finished working on the TSA commentary, and if she had any final thoughts before we stop talking about it. See what she says. Just kidding.
It's good advice.
But, anyways, back to what I was saying earlier, is that if they smell it in your car...
Deb, you're back. Oh, listen,
They're
we just
coming
finished
in.
talking about TSA.
TSA
It's about 35, 40 minutes
They are
straight
going to
without
make
you.
That's
and
not even true.
I don't know. We thought you were here. I don't know. You must be having fun in the other
You
radio
knew I
show
wasn't
that's
here
going on up
'cause
there.
my mouth wasn't
here it
running.
comes. Okay. Okay.
So, Michael, when under my theory, when people do get arrested, under my simplicity theory that officers are going to go attack this from a simplistic perspective.
Keeping it simple.
When they get back to the station and they're read their chemical test rights, do you advise people to take that test?
Is there anybody on the line still?
Or refuse it?
Chemical test rights.
Chemical test rights at the station, they ask you to submit a blood test. Do people
They're going
say
to get a
yes
warrant
or no?
anyways. They're going to get a warrant anyways.
So they might as well, right? Because implied consent, when you sign for your driver's license, you are in effect agreeing to allow them to do that because why, Jim? Because driving is a privilege.
It is a privilege.
And it's not a right.
That's right. The same with flying. It's a privilege, not a right. That's why they can get,
can't just
get
fly
away with
like
all that
an
crap.
eagle.
Yeah.
But you do get a ticket. You do get some kind of. You have some kind of interest or right when you get a ticket to be treated a certain way as you travel, as opposed to someone else that doesn't have a ticket.
What are you talking about? I
You're-
don't understand. I don't understand what you mean here.
It's a privilege to fly.
It's a privilege to fly,
It's,
right?
it's really not. I mean, it's not a privilege to fly. It's a pain in the ass to fly.
I
It's a pain in
agree.
the ass,
Supposed to
but
have, you know,
you don't
supposed
have
to
a
have a
right
right.
to fly. You don't have a right to fly.
Right, but when you buy a ticket and you've
Mm-hmm.
paid money, you have a property interest in being treated with due process.
Certainly.
About that property. So,
Yeah. So everybody's supposed to be treated the same.
well, okay, we're transitioning. We're all transitioning
We transition into TSA.
to TSA right
TSA.
TSA.
TNA.
Yeah, it's a little TNA
This
at the
question's about
checkpoint.
traveling with marijuana. First,
At
before we even talk
DTW.
about this, let's get into our
TNA.
role-playing outfits.
Oh, we get to role play?
And
Yeah.
Deborah's
Where's my
going to start
leotard?
without any need to act. She's going to tell us about, in the voice of a TSA agent, what we should be expecting.
Ex-TSA agent.
In the voice of.
Okay.
You're not going to speak in the voice of an ex. You're going to act in the voice of a.
I have to. I'm supposed to be screening you.
No, talk to us like
right
we're.
now, pretend you're
the audience.
back then. You
Mhm.
have to talk to us like you talk to a customer.
Okay.
Well, someone that she said has no right to fly. Okay.
No, I don't say you didn't have a right to fly. I said flying is not a right; it's a privilege.
Okay.
So if they deny you fly, we had people who say, "Oh, it's my right to fly." It's not your right to fly. It's not your right to get on somebody else's airplane and, you know,
So if you
That was the
said
case. Put me on David Gibbons.
you don't have a right to a driver's license, do you, Michael? It's a privilege. It's
No, but
something-
once they give you a right, once you have a license.
But you don't own that forever. It's a privilege. They can take it away from you.
Not without due process. It's
so-
an entitlement. So the difference is it an entitlement, a government entitlement? And if it is,
Well, it is according to the Patriot Act. Are you talking about searching people going on? That's why they have that stupid Patriot Act. It allowed TSA to basically do whatever they wanted.
They do what they
for the
want.
purposes
I'm
of,
not defending TSA.
No,
I
I
was
know,
a
I know.
former
It's a-
TSA
okay.
agent.
So let's talk about, at least for practical. Let's avoid the Fourth Amendment debate. Tell us practically about.
About flying with marijuana?
Well, what are people? Yeah, traveling.
Traveling with marijuana.
Yes.
Okay. Well, first disclaimer. Obviously, I'm not an attorney, and I don't recommend
not legal
anybody
advice.
to do anything.
Yeah, definitely
Okay.
don't fly
Don't-
with marijuana.
Well, I'm not saying fly or don't fly with marijuana. What I'm saying is the TSA is not looking for drugs or marijuana. That is not what the agents are trained for. They're trained to find IEDs only. That's it. Looking for bombs, explosives, guns, knives.
Yeah. Screwdrivers
Right.
longer than 6 inches.
When you go through a checkpoint, you have federal agents who are the TSA agents, and on every checkpoint there is one Wayne County sheriff. That's a local law enforcement.
what about a dog?
Well, they don't bring the dogs in. The dogs, that comes
and
later.
those dogs are only bomb
Yeah,
dogs.
and those are bomb dogs that they're walking around with. If you come through the checkpoint and they find marijuana in your carry-on baggage, if they say anything at all, which they won't, I worked there 3 years. We were directed just to ignore it, unless it was an excessive amount. If people are just personal use, we just ignored it. The directive from above on if you find an excessive amount is you turn it over to the local law enforcement, which is the Wayne County Sheriff, sitting on the checkpoint, and they take it from there. Marijuana is legal in the state of Michigan.
Were those sheriffs bald and did
They
have
were
small
they were
penises?
fat, and one of them fell down an escalator at the checkpoint one time. We were watching, and he he got up out of his chair, which he'd obviously been sleeping in, staggered over and fell backwards down the escalator. It was hilarious.
Weebles wobble.
He just disappeared, and we just what the hell? It's like he dropped off the earth.
That one fell down though.
Yeah. So you would, I mean, in
video footage
in
is
that
priceless.
scenario, you would turn over the marijuana or the cannabis to the Wayne County Sheriff, who would do nothing because it's legal in the state of Michigan. So many times we saw marijuana, many times we saw things like that. We just ignore it. Now, I'm not advising anybody to do that, to fly with it, but I fly with it frequently.
Well, in the
No
article,
problems.
there's a section that says, "So to be clear, can I fly with pot?" And the answer in the article says no. Here's why, according to Larry Michigan, a Northbrook, Illinois lawyer at the Hoban Law Group.
Okay, but did he ever work at the checkpoint
Hoban.
practically?
Well,
and what we were instructed to do is what I just told
Yeah,
you.
none of these lawyers are going to say, "Yeah, go ahead and."
No, and I'm not
go
saying
ahead
that
and take it
either.
over
I'm not
different
saying that
lines.
either. I'm
Yeah,
just
no,
saying
no.
that that is the policy.
No, I don't care.
That TSA is there to screen for weapons.
You want
not
to make sure
for
things
drugs.
not going to blow up,
Right.
Yeah.
But summed up, it says marijuana is illegal under federal law, and federal law governs airplane travel in this country.
And the agents, if they find marijuana, are supposed to turn it over to the local. So in Michigan, if you turn it over to the local law enforcement, it's legal. They're just going to laugh at you. Wayne County Sheriff, what are they going to do with it? If it's under 2.5 ounces, smoke it, right?
Has there ever been a time that you know of that a TSA agent was called to testify?
No.
So that means that there would ever witness that they would have been.
Well, no, I don't think anybody ever. When I worked TSA, nobody ever got busted for bringing cannabis through, and we saw it all the time. You'd open the bags, people would stick joints in their cigarette packs. They'd have it in their front pockets,
Right.
all the time. We just didn't. You didn't say anything. You just
So-
said, "Okay, have a good flight."
It's under 2.5 ounces. It gets turned over to the local law enforcement. You didn't leave the state yet.
Nothing happens to you, and they can't.
There's
keep
no
it.
like a conspiracy to
No, you stick
smuggle
it in
out
your
of the state
pocket.
or anything.
You put it in your pocket, and you will go back through again. I just put it in my carry-on and threw it on the belt and walked through every time, and nobody ever says anything. And as I know, they won't because I work there, and I know that they won't.
So the biggest fear is somebody inside takes it.
Well, but you're standing right there. You watch your bag. You make sure don't put it in your check bag. Put it in your carry-on. If you
don't
put it in your check bag, it's going to disappear.
If they find it.
I've had it in my check bag.
I'll tell you
I
what.
do think
the
that
two biggest
TSA
things stolen out of check bags was cannabis
Deborah,
and
true or false?
Viagra. Seriously.
True or false, TSA has in the past made announcements, or at least there's been announcements that state that if you're flying from a medical marijuana state to another medical marijuana state, they will not consider your cannabis, assuming that it's within compliance, you get your card with you, to be subject to confiscation.
Perhaps, and I will say that the places that I've flown with it have been legal states. So I'm flying from a legal state into, but I just know from what the standard operating manual said about what to do if you see marijuana, and that is you turn it over to local law enforcement.
If you see it, you have to take it.
No, you inform local law enforcement who's standing on the checkpoint right behind you if he's not falling down the stairs. He's standing right behind you, and you would say to him, "Oh, look, here's like 4 ounces of weed. He's only supposed to have a couple ounces." But it never happened. We never did that.
Are
We
you
just-
required to know the law of the existing law that you're looking for what someone can or cannot have?
You're only looking for a weapon, so you're not even looking for that. If you're screening for metals. You're screening for explosives. You're
right.
not screening. If you come across weed, it's just because you open the bag and it's laying on top. You're not looking for it. You're not screening
and you
for
don't
it.
know if it's illegal, and if you're in a state that it is legal, you're not going to take it because it's not something you've been
You don't
authorized
take it.
to take.
You've been told at the briefing, if you see weed, ignore it. That's what they told us. Ignore it.
Not the job.
It's
You
not
know?
going to make the
It's
plane
not
blow
what
up.
you're
Why did
doing.
it take us
It's
that
not-
long to get that out of you? That you're told at the briefing.
At the briefing, during your training, if you see
Everybody's wearing their
cannabis,
underwear.
ignore it.
Did you sign an NDA?
Unless somebody's dragging pounds through, and then you tell the fat cop behind you. Otherwise, just ignore it. And
How do you
that's
feel
what
about NDAs? Just kidding.
How do you feel about NDAs?
I haven't
Did you
worked
sign
for them
an
in a long
NDA?
time, and I did not leave on good terms,
That's a
so I don't
Democratic-
really care.
That's a
Okay.
Democratic convention or debate joke, I guess,
Yeah,
right?
that is.
But at the screening, at the first day, they said ignore the marijuana.
Yes.
Ignore the weed.
Yes.
Is that just a Michigan TSA?
I only worked in Michigan, so I can't.
But
tell
they
you.
didn't say to you you're a Michigan TSA agent,
No.
so
No.
Yeah, only
No.
in Michigan.
And when I was TSA agent, cannabis was not legal, and medical marijuana was not legal. I was a TSA agent right after 9/11 until 2003 and a half, somewhere in there. So it was not legal, and we were told.
what other things were you told at
Just
the
cannabis.
beginning? Would it be like It's okay to pick out the most obvious person.
I used
that
to
would
see
be
gat from, you know what that is? From Yemen, they chew that gat. I used to see that in suitcases all the time, and we were told to ignore that also. Just ignore it. And that's also illegal.
I don't know about gat. So
I heard about the gat.
So that means,
dude, the first time I saw it, I'm like, what is this? This guy's got like these sticks in his bag. They look like it looked like weed, sticks, but with the.
It's a cultural thing.
Yeah, it's like an amphetamine, and they chew the leaf.
Their
Yemen.
cheek.
It's Yemeni. Yeah, they do it in Yemen.
And they allow their saliva to warm it up, and then they suck the drippings.
Sublingual.
Yeah, and you see the guys in Yemen, even here in the States, the Yemeni guys, they'll have a big, like, wad in their mouth all the time, and that's what they're doing.
I think it's illegal here.
It's illegal. That's what I just
Here,
said.
here.
It's not legal here. It's illegal
I
here.
know.
Yeah, it's definitely illegal here.
It may even be illegal there, but they. No. Yemen, they allow
No,
it.
it's fine there. It's
not everywhere.
everybody.
Not all throughout the Middle East. Not every
No,
country.
no, I'm talking
There's
about
a statute that says, like,
in Yemen,
VAT
everybody
is
in Yemen's
illegal?
doing it. I mean, even the women, the men, they all.
Here, Michigan, there's something that says it's illegal.
Yes, because
It's a
I actually
schedule.
saw a
The
notice
contents of it.
from Access, which is a Arab American social services group, warning people. This is an illegal.
Stay off the gat.
Don't bring this in. Don't get caught with this. This is an illegal substance. Blah blah. Because people come over, they think that it's just a normal thing. It's like drinking coffee.
Chew
to them,
some gat.
It should
they
be.
They don't understand it's illegal here.
And it should not be.
You ever seen a room full of guys chewing this gat?
As soon as decriminalized nature gets done, we're gonna have to legalize
We'll have
VAT.
to get gat too. Yeah.
VAT.
Gat.
GHAT. Yeah.
They did say to you in your training.
And you have
Yes,
to be
they
careful
absolutely
in
said
No,
in the
I know. I'm
training.
going to say.
Absolutely.
They would say to you in your training, listen, you training for TSA are authorized to harass whoever you want for any reason. And even if they look like there's no way in the world they could ever cause harm or bring harm to us, please feel free to go do a cavity search of them.
That's exactly the training I got, word for word, Michael. And I
if they
raised
look
my
like
hand
there's
and
no
they
way it
swore
would
me in.
happen, go ahead and pull them out of line. Like, and let all of your twisted,
They had a thing called continuous wanding, which means you had to continuously be checking somebody. So that's why people get pulled out of line, because as soon as I'm done with this person, I got to grab the next one, and it's nothing personal. I just got to keep
wanding.
Yeah, when I was doing it, like I said, it was right after
Crotch grabbing.
9/11, so we had National Guard on the checkpoint too. So I had a line of National Guard soldiers behind me, like maybe 12 of them.
And they
The
definitely
checkpoint,
wanted
and then
the
the
weed.
fat Wayne County sheriff was
Yeah.
behind them.
Just numbers.
It was quite a scene.
QAT is a leafy intoxicant grown across Yemen. The majority of Yemeni adults are at least occasional users of this amphetamine-alike alkaloid. While some health studies have shown that chewing gat is less addictive and less harmful than alcohol, the effect is egregious on Yemeni society.
I got to tell you, it really is. I mean, it's caused a lot of harm. It's a very poverty-stricken population to begin with, and this just caused a lot of harm.
Because they'll start doing it a certain part of the day, and then they'll look unproductive.
Well, there's no
Some
jobs
people
to begin with. I mean, so
Well, they- yeah, but-
unproductive.
Do they get addicted to it?
It's very addictive, and if you see Yemeni men, they like gather in big groups and they're doing it, and they're all sweaty and red-faced. So it doesn't look pleasant. So I have to assume that people get addicted to it because it does not look pleasant.
Afghanistan's a homeland for hash smoking.
Hashish, yes.
Yeah, and there's a whole cultural.
Much
It's
better.
illegal,
Yeah,
but they
Afghani
still
red.
smoke it regularly, and
The Afghani.
Afghani.
I
Yeah.
like marijuana in the United States until recently.
Right.
What are the other questions about traveling? Do we
do
figure
like
them out?
hash?
Joel, what are your questions about traveling?
You want to hear stories of hemp and dope traveling?
But I got one more quick thing to say, and then I'll let you go.
Go ahead. I'll try to think of something.
I went to Cannabis Cup in Vegas on Spirit Airlines, and the entire airlines was all going to Cannabis Cup, and we all were carrying, and we all got on the plane with our stuff, and we all got off the plane, and then we all got on the plane with whatever we had left in Vegas and came home with it, and none of us had any problems. There you go.
That's spirit.
All of us.
Pounds
I mean,
and
so.
pounds.
Well,
It's a
I
good
don't know.
commercial
I
for
didn't have
Spirit
pounds and
Airlines,
pounds
that's for
because
sure.
I mean, I know somebody who had a lot of concentrates with them on that plane. And I was like, wow, because I was surprised at the amount of concentrates in their carry-on. And they told me, they said, yeah, I just walked right through. So they're not looking for this. I can promise you.
I tell you, I feel
Spirit
better
Airlines.
I've told
taking it
people
on
this,
a
but they-
plane than in my car.
Yeah, I've told people
For the
this though,
reasons
and they-
stated earlier.
But I don't want anybody to call me up and say, "Hey, I took your advice and now I'm sitting in Wayne County Jail." So I'm just saying that for myself, that's been my experience and my training as a TSA agent.
Well, if you were there one phone call, that would really suck.
Yeah,
I had
that
a
would
cli-
suck.
listen,
Yeah,
I had a
they'd be in
client.
a lot of trouble.
I had a client. I remember he was from California. It's like in the film industry or something like that. He was here doing something. Maybe went to school here. He's back. And his parents lived here. That's right. He lived out in California. He was working on like back whatever. And his parents had given him like a half of a Percocet because he was an injury or something like that. Got on the plane. They caught him with it.
Oh man.
Like it's so random. Like think of what you have to randomly come across to find a.
He just
a
had
pill.
He had a loose pill.
Yeah, something like that. You know what I mean? And he got pulled off, missed his flight, got charged with it's like a Schedule 3 or something like that. You know what I mean?
Prescription meds have to be in their original.
They sure do.
container. This is a crime.
Yeah,
You'll
they
get
sure
messed
do.
up.
Not just on a plane, but I mean, if you're even in your car, yeah.
Yeah.
We have
That
too
is
many
true.
rules.
And
Rules.
it was a sheriff's case, and then it was prosecuted by the state over there in that Romulai District Court, Romulai.
Romulai.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got sexually assaulted on the checkpoint one time, and that's where they tried the
As a TSA agent?
As a TSA agent, I was at the
By
a drunk passenger who pushed me up against the wall and tried to make out with me on the checkpoint. I mean, I just like
Was
yeah,
that on
just
video?
Like,
Was it Joe Namath?
it was this really drunk dude who kept going back and forth, and he had like I swear to God, he
And
had
I
this line of
kiss
toilet
you.
paper coming out of the back of his
It was
pants.
the uniform.
No,
It was
dude,
definitely
so he
the
kept going
uniform.
back and forth to go outside and smoke, and every time he went back and forth, he was drunker and drunker. And I'm at the exit line, and I'm the supervisor. I'm talking to one of my screeners, and the guy walks by, and I didn't say a word. And the next thing I know, he did pushed me against the wall and was like trying to kiss me, and nobody did
That is
anything.
fucked up.
I said to, why didn't anybody stop him? They're like, oh, we thought you were making. I'm making out with somebody on the checkpoint.
We thought you were making.
Yeah.
Thought you were into it. Yeah.
That
What
wasn't
the
in
hell?
the briefing.
Well,
What kind of woman
but,
are
so
you?
The Wayne County Sheriff on the checkpoint.
kind of-
Finally, he woke up and he came over and he grabbed the guy and they arrested him and they charged him with sexually
First of all,
assaulting me.
if their response is we thought in the middle of your security job you're making out with a drunk passenger that's smoking cigarettes, what are they thinking?
I
First
know.
of all,
This is
the
what I'm saying. This was the
One of the
workforce.
perks of the job,
okay?
yeah.
Right.
This was the workforce.
Toilet paper.
I'm
This
telling you,
the
it was the
highly
uniform.
trained American workforce. Because when I first started that job, right after 9/11, most of the workforce was foreign-born because they were screeners. They were paying $8 an hour until 9/11 came. They were almost all Middle Eastern people,
Who?
and the
The
screeners that
screeners?
I worked with before 9/11,
Right.
and for the first year after 9/11, before they could train quote qualified Americans, it was 99% Middle Eastern and me screening people at the airport. That's what it was. The workforce was 1,500 of us, and most of us were foreign-born Middle Eastern because
So-
nobody would take those jobs at $8
So when do you
an
write
hour.
the book?
Did I write the book?
No, there's got to be a story.
Training
Lots of stories.
manual.
But once
Manual.
9/11 happened, the federal government came in and took over those jobs. They fired all those people and hired qualified Americans and paid them $12 an hour.
Woo.
So this is why you're getting treated so badly, because these people are not getting paid very well. And it's not a very, very nice job.
kind of like a probation officer.
Yeah, it's
Underpaid,
not-
overworked, lots of pressure.
And I know
the
for
only
the first 2 years, it was like 65 hours a week, mandatory overtime. You had no choice. And
And if you're showing up and you're pissed off, you feel overworked, and the only thing you can do while you got to be there is to
I had,
harass
listen,
other people.
no, I had great time at this
Shoot your
airport. I
disdain-
screened.
Same
I
as being
screened.
a cop.
Hmm?
Same as being a cop. They don't get paid very much.
So you just abuse people, take
I
out your
screened rock
frustration.
stars. I screened bands, all kinds of stuff. Dave
I never
Grohl,
complained
I
about
searched
my
his
pay.
bag.
I
Ozzy,
did okay.
all kinds of people.
Did you take into consideration what you
I
did
wanted
about
Jesse
Ozzy?
Jackson.
Huh?
Nice.
David Grohl, I did. I opened his bag, and his whole band. They had a charter flight, and they needed one female because you have to have one male and one female at least when you screen a flight. So I went down with it. I said, "Sure, I'll go." And we went through their bags. It was awesome. Met them, screened them.
Why would anybody charter a flight out of Detroit? I think there'd be a better place to do it where they don't do
They
that.
performed here.
Yeah, but
And there was a terminal called the Berry Terminal, and they had a lot of charter flights going out of there. And also Air Jordanian, which was the best flight. I screened that flight once a week out of there.
they don't
That
do
was-
that at the other
I could
airports.
talk about that.
It's
What?
not, they don't screen private at the other airports, do they? Like
Yeah.
Oakland? No, they don't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Everybody is at random.
Private flights.
Huh?
Everybody or random? I mean, if you
No,
own your own
everybody.
jet or whatever, you don't get screened. But
No,
for
no,
but if
yeah.
you charter a plane,
These are charters. Yeah, that's not private.
Okay.
They're charters.
Let's see.
Yeah, everybody who goes out has to be screened.
And what was your most memorable?
Jesse Jackson.
That was it. Him.
Jesse Jackson was cool. Adam West.
Oh, Batman.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Did he have marijuana in his suitcase?
Uncle Cracker. No, he did not, and he was like really quiet and unassuming. And this is the first year after 9/11 when all the screeners were like, Middle Eastern and Pakistani, and these Pakistani guys were going crazy because they fucking love Batman. They were going insane. They're like, oh my God, it's Batman. Yeah, it was awesome.
Joel, did you have a travel story that you wanted to share with us? You don't have to.
Hemp related.
Well, you see, I don't know if we can actually make this segue, because I'm realizing now if we're serious about doing hemp, we have to really create a separation between marijuana, and this has to be now a 0.03% THC show going forward. So I need to know that there's a...
Ironically, we say the word marijuana, but at no point in time that we discuss the concentration level. For all purposes, Joel, the speaking of anything that we're talking about really is
Yes.
we're speaking about the cannabis sativa L plant.
Okay.
It's actually kind of anti-progressive to play that identity politics game
as long
of
as-
a percentage of THC versus the others. How dare you?
Well,
That's
as long
so,
as if these
you
are,
would get
if these
nailed
are
on
your
the internet.
rules,
No, I'm just kidding.
If these are your rules, then I'll have to think of a marijuana.
Listen. I know what you're talking about because those in the hemp industry sometimes don't want to rub, and with cannabis they see it as
Sure.
a different industry, and I get that. But if we're talking CBD, I don't know if that's even a fair argument.
Let's talk.
versus-
Let's talk CBD in crossing the Canadian border.
Go ahead.
I mean, because that is certainly within the spectrum.
Let's
Because
hear about it.
That's a problem. Like, for example, I heard, and this was less than a year ago, a student from Guelph was traveling to Ann Arbor. They're both college towns. And she had CBD with her as she was needing it, I guess, for some muscle or something like that.
Going
Some pain.
to Michigan from Canada?
Going from Canada to Ann Arbor.
Yep.
And she got stopped. She was, I think, like 19 or 20. And they found CBD. Now, it's hard to get CBD. You can't buy CBD other than through Health Canada. You certainly can't go to a video store or a gas station or a health food store. But she had it because she, needed it and was able to get it. But
Where did
couldn't-
she get it?
In Canada.
Okay.
But you couldn't bring it into the U.S. Well, because those laws that are on either side of the border, and they're different on either side of the border, and I don't know them in great detail, are different enough that they haven't caught up to the, I guess that would be not immigration, but that would be customs people at the border. So if they observe CBD coming into the U.S., they don't know what to do with that because it's still, illegal in their
Is that
view.
a controlled substance?
Well,
Or are
they basically busted her, and she can't come back into the United States.
Wow.
She can come back in the United States.
She's stuck there?
Who gave her a hard time, the United States or Canada?
U.S.
Because she's a Canadian citizen, she's bringing CBD in?
That was the issue. I'll probably can go. This is like over 7 months ago.
That's
But I will
terrible.
tell you that is a reality. I think even the cross border, because when I travel and I have, I just came from a hemp conference after all. There's all kinds of CBD trinkets left about the car. We ended up, needing to make certain we moved the labels just because we didn't want the risk. So the interesting thing, and I always learn it in this show, that the marijuana oppression that ends up having affected everybody in this room, and certainly in the case law that you've done, is such that it still has a looming effect on industrial hemp, to the point that it really kind of, I don't know if they really want to do industrial hemp. And the agenda item that you had there for the show was the interim rules by the USDA, which haven't really come out. They just at the end of last year wanted people to comment and make surveys They missed the deadline. They extended it to the end of January to get everybody's input into it. So I can read you this survey that came from one of the states of those things that they are considering that smacks of the marijuana laws, and then obviously then the law enforcement of them. Do you want to hear the questions that are on the survey? No?
Yes, absolutely.
Just one. You think so? Well, the one that I find particularly unusual is the one about the regulation of pollen. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, and what should be, how should we handle that? Should we regulate pollen, and what happens if we then choose to regulate it?
Well, there are medical and recreational and other hemp gardens that could be affected by it.
All of that is true.
When hemp gardens,
Yeah,
right.
well-
so something, yeah, some kind of at least attention to that issue.
How would you detect that in a
Well-
traveler? Goodness gracious.
Well, how would you? I don't understand why they would end up having to think immediately to create some kind of a law to then hold somebody responsible or guilty when there could be coordination of farmers, whether they're growing outdoor hemp or CBD or marijuana, that there could be coordination, and then instead of, bringing people to the kind of circumstances that is the first part of the show.
Sure.
Because that's that regulatory part.
Just some type of it's a thing, so
It's
so
a problem. So how do you
gotta
have
be
a
addressed
solution
with-
that doesn't need to be handled by
Exactly.
law enforcement?
Exactly, right.
But that's the way these and that was just one question. You just wanted, because you know better. You said just give me one question. So so the other ones could be worse. So.
True.
So that's what's happening in hemp. I guess that's the Hemp Corner report. They're coming up with laws, and I think they're going to cascade down from the USDA in October of this year, and that's what they'll be. But I haven't seen them.
The problem is this. There was already a significant step by definition in legislation of the definition of cannabis development plant, how it's going to be treated, how it at the federal level, it is no longer illegal. And for all other purposes other than that proclamation, it is still being treated as legal for banking purposes, border crossing, and a lack of federal government participation in lanes to driving, in licenses to be had, and guidance at the federal level for what this is going to look like. It's almost, it has the visual and colors of the Stamp Act in a way. You know what I mean? In that,
I wasn't aware back then exactly how it affected me as I have an understanding now, but
I'm saying it's like it's illegal, but you need a Stamp Act, you need a ticket to have it.
Ticket to ride.
But they're not going to sell you one. And that's kind of, you can't get one because they're not selling.
Well,
that's how they made marijuana legal in the first place.
Those are the first questions that they were asking in the survey.
But what I'm saying
how
is
much does that cost?
Yeah, but the federal government has been, that passed this law now has like the DEA questioning the safety of CBD. They want to restudy it again. They just passed, they gave a license to the Epidiolex to sell it for
GW Pharmaceutical.
To treat epilepsy in children.
Right.
But they're not sure the safety of it being extracted from the hemp plant in the market, and that's what's been part of the slow roll. They want to go back and do more research. They want to not let the general public have access to it when they can certainly turn around and license it to some other, with a little molecular change for millions more. If I had to say it in a way that would make them seem nefarious with their motives.
Again, there's no coordination on understanding how to take risk with new meds for any kind of health care.
It's not a med, though. They say you can't talk about it as a med because they've got the market on the med. Don't call it a medicine.
So call it a food?
Call it a
supplement.
Call it a supplement.
A
not
nutraceutical approved.
Cannabis is listed in the American Herbal Pharmacopoeia.
Oh, so it's a food.
It is. Well, not necessarily a food. It's an herbal
Plant medicine.
supplement, which is not a food. Supplements are not food.
Herbal remedy. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Which I
So,
believe they're
so that's what the border customs agents are working on because it's all up in the air and they don't know what's going on. that's why they're not wanting it coming across either border. It's really wild. But anyway, that's the hemp news.
All right. I think that's a wrap.
It's pretty scary.
Yeah, I feel that.
Is that a wrap, Jim?
I feel that, Jimmy.
It's a wrap.
Jimmy's wrapping us up now.
Michael?
Wow, it's 10:25 almost.
Time flies when you're having
Really?
fun.
We blew the doors off the time limit today.
You guys got any final comments? Because I'm ready to drag this thing out another hour. We can get to topic number 2 now.
Don't forget, you
Just
got
kidding.
places
That's
to
my
go in the
favorite
morning.
joke. I tell that joke every week now.
You need
It's
your
funnier
sleep,
every
you got
time I
places
hear
to
it.
go in the morning.
Good wishes to those.
Next
attending
time I
Steve
will be.
Sharp's
I'm going to
show.
hold this dog. Should I be like? I should be like cat, like doc, like one of these, like.
Yeah.
Dr. Evil,
like-
that's
like,
Jamie's normal picture nowadays.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is Jamie, Dr. Strange.
We will sell marijuana for
$1 million.
$1 million.
Yes.
He's supposed to be Dr. Evil, but looks more like Dr. Strangelove.
That's what I said.
That is a wrap. Let's wrap it right there. Thanks for
That's it.
listening. Thanks for commenting. Alan, thank you for being there for us. And to everyone else who listened, I hope we answered a couple of the questions. And was bordering on informative. None of this was legal advice, though.
Especially
Please
what I
live
said.
at your own risk.
Mine is definitely not legal advice.
And we'll see you next week.
All right.
The Planet Green Trees Show.
Join the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association today. MichiganMedicalMarijuana.org. The MMMA is focused on the well-being and safety of medical marijuana patients. The MMMA site provides the most comprehensive and up-to-date news on legal issues, politics, research, cultivation, as well as the various strange products and methods of cannabis use. Come join the discussion with the most knowledgeable and passionate advocates in Michigan today. MichiganMedicalMarijuana.org.
Hello and welcome to Planet Green Trees. I am Earl, the host of Cannabis Therapy Podcast. And I'm here to give some information about cannabis so that we can have a well-balanced understanding of cannabis. And today we're going to talk about how to tell the sex of a cannabis plant. Yes, by the end of this episode, you should be able to identify if a plant is male and female, and why does it even matter, right? Cool. How to tell the sex of a cannabis plant. Now, I am live from Komorn's office. If you hear Komorn's voice, it is because he is on a rant with a client, and that is okay. But we're gonna push through this. Now, how to tell the sex of a cannabis plant. Tommy, you can throw that first image up there. Thank you very much. Genetics. A cannabis plant, believe it or not, female plants and male plants have different genetics and different chromosomes. Males have an XY chromosome and females have an XX chromosome. Now, from naked eye, you can't really tell that, but just look eternally and understand there is a genetic difference between male and female plants. Now, you can really tell the difference between the plants by their genitals. Believe it or not, plants have genitals. And for males, it's more pistils, and for females, it's more stamen. And you can tell the difference. There's an image up there right now. You can see the pistils look a little different than what the female stamen looks like. And almost those pistils will eventually give you a sign as to how they are going to be a male. And I'm going to show you that picture pretty soon. But usually, you can't really tell the difference between a male or female until about at least 2 to 4 weeks into that plant's growth cycle. And sometimes you won't even tell the plant difference between male and female until about 2 weeks into the flower cycle. So just because you saw during the vegetative cycle, and that's the vegetative cycle, that's when it's just growing. It's not flowering, it's just growing tall. And depending if you're on the indoors, that means you're giving it at least 18 hours of light, okay? Up to 24 hours, because it's only 24 hours in a day. And then, at some point, you flip it to flowering, which is 12 hours of lightness, 12 hours of darkness. And you could have been vegging for 6 weeks, and it looks like it's still a female, but then 2 weeks in the flower, bang, you find a male. And what do? We're going to talk about that soon. So, some other ways, we're going to put up another picture for me, Tommy, is how you can identify signs of a male plant. And the most common way of finding out if this plant is a male is by the pollen sacs. Yes, those pistils now turn into some kind of pollen sac. And literally it looks like little balls, like a plant has balls. And you can tell that those are there by looking right in between the pistils, or right at the point of the branches. You see little pistils, you also can see little ball sacs. And you look at that image, you can kind of see it right there too. Another sign said you do not sight it. Remember, I told you in 2 to 4 weeks of its growth cycle, you can tell if it's a male or female, but sometimes you can't really tell until it's in the flowering stage. But one of the signs you could tell is during the veg stage. If you don't see the pollen sacs, it's growing fast and it's growing taller than all of your other plants. Most males grow a lot taller and faster than females. So that's a sign to kind of like, let me watch this guy. Another one is it grows more straight. A lot of females tend to be a little bit more bushier. So if it's growing more straight up, taller, faster, another sign it could be a male. And then less flowers. Typically you can't tell that until it's in the flower stage. And if you're really seeing less flowers at that point, it's probably too late to take it out of your grow room, and you may as well just ride it out. And I'm gonna talk about later, well, it's okay. Male plants are okay. We as males should be accepted in society as plants. And then also tighter clusters. So you see a lot of male plants have a little bit tighter nodes. Females a little bit more spaced out, and male. So those are some signs that you can, and tricks that you can use to identify a male. And the reason why people or growers prefer females over male plants, well, females typically produce more THC. They're typically more potent. But typically, if you separate the females from the males, something called sensibililia happens, and the plants become more plumper, because the plants, if the females are getting plump, looking for pollen, it's not there, and they just keep getting more plump. And that gives you a higher yield. So that's a lot of the reasons why growers will separate females and males. And also, females have a natural higher cannabinoid and terpene profile. Cannabinoids, I've talked about briefly. You can always go to our Cannabis Therapy podcast to look at other episodes that explain the endocannabinoid system and how it pairs with cannabinoids. But in a short sentence, cannabinoids are hundreds of different compounds, chemical compounds in the plant. There's over hundreds of different cannabinoids, such as THC is one of the most popular cannabinoids. CBD is a popular cannabinoid. THCA, CBN. So there's a lot of, and there's hundreds of those. And then there's also terpenes. Terpenes really give you the aroma, the smell of it as well. And tied in with some of the flavonoids, it can also give you certain tastes as well. But when you pair those cannabinoids with those terpenes, you get effects. Some can make you more sleepy, some can make you more calm, some can make you horny, whatever it is, all those chemical compounds, it's like an orchestra. All of it plays. It's not just the flute, not just the drums, it all plays like a symphony. So females have a higher concentration of a lot more cannabinoids and terpenes. And then also, they do not produce seeds. Typically, they do not produce seeds on the average unless they're stressed out. So, and seeds, which gets me to the point of it's okay to have some male plants, because seeds right now kind of, there's been a stigma that if cannabis had seeds, that it's kind of low quality cannabis. And that typically came from the history of, when it was in the early days of Prohibition, a lot of cannabis coming from Mexico or these areas where they kind of had brickweed, where it's just growing out in the wild. There's male and females that pollinate each other, and it's really kind of low quality weed put in bricks, sent over here, and people saw that association with, well, it had seeds, must be that brickweed. But you can grow high quality cannabis even though it does have seeds. Males, you can even hemp itself, go and craft hemp. males, you can still produce and give the same loving care as you would just females. And it will taste just the same, and it tastes just as good. So you don't have to just kill your whole crop. You can still ride that out, grow that, give the same love and care, and it still will be consumable. But the last thing is kind of like watermelon. If, say, genetic watermelon that was modified could produce no seeds, and then you have natural watermelon with seeds. Say it wasn't genetically modified, it was actually, there is male or there's female watermelons that doesn't have seeds, and there's male watermelons that do have seeds. End of the day, they both will taste like watermelon. And I get how having a male watermelon with seeds can get annoying, trying to spit out the seeds and picking them out. But at the end of the day, you still could enjoy the watermelon and get to the juiciness. Ha! Cool. So where to start if you're looking to grow? And say you do want female seeds. One of the ways is you want female plants, one of the ways is you can source auto-flowering seeds. And pretty much what an auto-flowering seed is that no matter what the life cycle is, within 8, 10, 11 weeks, this plant is going to flip into flower and be ripe and ready to harvest. But just because it's auto-flowering doesn't mean that it's not a male in there as well. So you still gotta watch it. You still gotta watch it for 2 to 4 weeks. Still gotta watch it as it begins to auto-flower. But a lot of auto-flowering seeds have a higher percentage of being female. Another higher percentage of being female seed type or category is feminized seeds. Feminized seeds, if you recall what I said earlier, is that, females can produce seeds. What? Yes, females can produce seeds if you stress them out. And it could be because it was too hot, it was too cold, too much, it was too less of humidity, too much humidity, too much light. It's an art to growing, and if you don't keep that balance, that female plant could get stressed, overfeeding it, underfeeding it, the soil. So all these things, how much wind is blowing on it. So it could get stressed out, and it could produce seeds despite you not having any male plants in the garden. So when that female produces seeds, believe it or not, those are feminized seeds. And it is about a 90% chance that that seed from that female plant that was stressed out is also a female. So there's people who actually go into business and actually stress out plants on purpose to produce feminized seeds so that people will pay more for that higher guarantee that their seeds or plants will actually be females. So that's feminized seeds. But you still gotta watch them. There's a 90% chance. So if you're really trying to keep them separate, you still wanna watch them for at least 2 to 4 weeks into flower. And then the really sure way to understand if you're really trying to keep your males separate from your females and you really want just females for all the benefits we talked about earlier is cloning. If you cut a clone from a female plant, 100% of the time it is going to be also the same genetic of that clone that you make. Just as if you cut a clone of yourself, most likely if I cut a clone of Earl, that other person will look and act just like Earl. It would not be a female Earl unless this is a Star Wars movie and something happened where that happened. But this is not Star Wars, this is reality. We're in Detroit, Michigan. That does not happen yet. So that is how to tell the sex of a cannabis plant. I hope by listening to this, you got a well-balanced understanding of cannabis and cannabis products, and you learned something that you can spread. Please like and share the Planet Green Trees podcast with a friend, and also the Cannabis Therapy podcast. Check it out on YouTube, subscribe, like it, and even if you don't like that friend, send it to them also, because maybe they will start using cannabis and they become cooler. Who knows? Peace out.